Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 121, Feeling Like a Burden. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my compassionate and caring co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. How was your week so far this week?
Not too bad. I'm finally out of band camp, which is nice.
You know, not too bad. It's pretty good considering you had a dentist appointment and an orthodontist appointment this week.
Well, at least they weren't on the same day like the last time.
That's true. But that, you know, having a week, it's not so bad. Just goes to show you how tough band camp was last week.
Yeah, compared to last week, I kind of prefer this week. Even having to go to the orthodontist and dentist wasn't as bad.
Hey, but you know what? You survived it. You came out stronger. You said the conditioning worked. You're able to do some of the routines now a little bit easier. So I think mission accomplished, right?
Yeah.
So this week we are talking about being a burden. This was another topic that you had come up with and did the research for. So situations, emotions, and hormones often combine in our teens to make them feel like a burden on those around them, or at least that's what they perceive. We'll explore why this happens, some of the things that can cause this, and finally, we'll look at ways to help our teens combat this. But before we do that, I would invite our audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can get audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions of all the network's podcasts can be found listed as Insights into Things. And we're available anywhere you can get a podcast: Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc., etc. I would also invite our audience to give us some feedback. Write in. Reach out. We'd love to get suggestions for show topics. Love to get feedback on how we're doing. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. On Twitter, you can get us at insights_things. We're at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. Or we're on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can get links to all those and more on our website at insightsintothings.com. Are we ready?
Sure.
All right. So why do people feel like a burden? So this research came from the bellfoundation.org.au, another one of our Australian sources. We used one of those last week as well. More often than not, feeling like a burden is tied to other issues, such as self-esteem, depression, guilt, or other feelings that are overwhelming for us to handle. We in turn believe that if those feelings are an overwhelming burden on us, then it makes us an overwhelming burden on others. Feeling like a burden is usually a symptom of a larger problem, not the root cause of the problem itself. Determining the reason for feeling like a burden is the key to addressing the root cause of the issues we may face. Many people that go through an episode of depression feel like a burden to others. Often, individuals who live with depression struggle with feelings of guilt. It seems to be linked intrinsically with depression and how someone with this illness perceives themselves. They may express how they feel worthless or a burden to the people that are caring for them.
Often as carers, we find ourselves saying, "There is nothing to feel guilty for. You can't help feeling ill." The individual may be aware of this, but they are unable to move past the negative thoughts they are experiencing. Being stuck in negative thinking is a major part of depression. Guilt is synonymous with mental ill health. People that are depressed may often feel they are undeserving of love and happiness. They may feel that they are taking away people's time and energy needlessly.
It's important to understand that someone with depression doesn't want to feel guilty or a burden. They don't enjoy it or encourage it. There's a tremendous pressure on all of us in society to appear well and to not talk about negative feelings. When someone is depressed, this feeling is exacerbated, and they'll often hide how they truly feel from people that care about them. There's a real fear that they're burdening people around them with too great a responsibility. Depression causes people to self-destruct and to not seek help or support. They may push others away from them and damage relationships, sometimes irreparably. People with depression may also have had experiences when they have shared how they felt in the past. They may have opened up to someone they've trusted, and that person hasn't been able to deal with it. They may have been met with silence or just simply ignored. This can damage future relationships and how much they trust other people to help them when they're ill. Someone with depression may be surrounded by genuine, caring individuals, but still struggle with trusting them. They might convince themselves that they'll be left alone, or what happened in the past may happen all over again.
Feeling like a burden makes many people with depression stay silent. They may feel they're not worthy of help. They may feel they will just drag people down with them. It's important we make people feel that they no longer have to be silent. That it's okay to tell people that they're unwell and struggling. They need to feel that when they do open up, they will be met with support. It's also okay for people around them to say it is a struggle sometimes to support someone with depression. It's important for them to acknowledge that it's not easy, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Seeing someone unwell is very difficult, especially when they are dealing with very negative thoughts. We want to help someone who is unwell and make them feel better. It isn't because we see someone as a burden. It's because as compassionate human beings, we want to help those who may be suffering. It may also be because we went through something similar and are grateful for those who helped us through it and want to continue that positive movement by helping others. What we can do to help someone is to be there for them. We can listen and offer practical support.
So this is kind of a heavy topic for today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, kinda.
So let me ask, with all that said and done, and that was a very detailed definition of what feeling like a burden kind of is and some of the things that it might stem from. Have you had feelings of being a burden on others?
I mean, we've kind of mentioned the fact that I feel that I'm your little burden, basically. So, yeah, I'd say I've kind of felt like a burden to others.
And what do you think that feeling stems from? Is it self-esteem issues? Is it depression? Is it just the general state of being a teenager dependent on other people?
I think it's probably mostly related to my self-esteem. I know I don't really have depression, and I don't really have I don't really think it just stems from the fact that I'm still young and I need your help, because I have kind of been striving to be slightly more independent. So I guess it kind of all ties back to my own self-esteem. And I think a lot of it is kind of like, when I get upset, I feel like I'm burdening you guys with my problems because you have to worry about taking care of me while also worrying about everything else. And I've actually also kind of felt that way in marching band, sort of. Because, we've been talking about, how, everything I do, I have to, it's just me in a way. If I don't get my steps right, the form's not really gonna look right. So, if I do mess something up, or if I feel too needy, with you or the people at marching band, I feel like I'm a burden.
I understand. That makes sense. And from the marching band standpoint, this is the first time you've really been involved in a team event, a team participation. And if you look at it objectively, really, if anybody messes up their part, it has an effect. Yeah. So that doesn't single you out as a burden. It's your first year. So I could totally understand the overwhelming feeling of learning all this stuff that you've never been exposed to. But this is why you have mini camp and band camp and rehearsal, and the rest of the band understands that. They were all first years at some point in time themselves, and they all went through it at the same time. So I wouldn't, I understand where it comes from. But if that becomes an overwhelming feeling, you probably should talk to the band director and kind of explain your feelings. And I'm sure they're very well equipped to deal with this, because he's been doing it for a long time, and you're not the first person to walk in with a lot of these feelings. Mm-hmm. As a individual who suffers from depression myself, I've gone through the feelings, those deep lows emotionally, where you do feel like a burden on the people around you, and you feel like you don't want to bother other people when you're like I'm the type of person that when I go through these depressive periods, I know that I can logically acknowledge that my life is pretty good. I have these issues that I go through, that it's not I lost my job or a loved one passes away. Those things tend to not trigger depressive episodes for me. They just sort of come out of the blue, and you're overwhelmed by these feelings of depression and sadness and questioning self-worth, and I don't know where they come from, so I don't want to. I'm very hesitant to talk about things like that with other people, because I don't know how to deal with them myself. And I don't want to. I'm overwhelmed by them, and I don't want to overwhelm other people. So a lot of what they talk about here about keeping silent is very true. And the few times that I have actually gone out and talked to people, whether it's talking to mommy or when I would go through these periods and my mom was around and I would talk to her, or if I've talked to counselors, that act of talking about it, because you're not looking for an answer. You're really not. It's not like you're going to someone and you'll tell them what the problem is and they'll give you an answer to it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But what it really is about is talking through what you're feeling and just having somebody to listen. And when you can talk those things and vocalize those things to someone else, it helps you to understand them a lot better, even if the person on the other side doesn't say a word. Like, my mother very rarely said anything when I had these talks with her, but just the fact that she was listening and having that compassionate person to talk to about it was in itself uplifting. So it is important to talk about these things when you're feeling like a burden, and by talking about them with other people, you're not burdening them with it.
Yeah.
a lot of the problems that you're running into as a teen, you still have to deal with. So when I think of burdening someone in the literal sense, it's like giving them the problems and letting them solve them. But you're really not doing that, are you?
Not really.
No, you're basically trying to figure out how to deal with them. And when you talk your way through it, it's kind of like when you talk to yourself. You know, if you're sitting there putting something together, you're doing a Lego project, or you're trying to assemble furniture, and you're reading the instructions and you start talking to yourself, that talking to yourself helps your brain to work a different way. You look at the problem from a different angle. So when you vocalize it, you're working different parts of your brain, and it helps your brain to figure things out. So that's really what you're doing when you're discussing these feelings with someone. You're not putting the feelings on someone else. You're using that conversation to kind of rewire your thinking about those problems. And sometimes when you do that, it helps you to figure them out where you otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So don't ever hesitate to talk to Mommy or I about any of these things. You know, we're here to help. That is, we joke around that you're our little burden, but as parents, we accept that.
Yeah.
And as parents, you know, we are responsible for you. We're responsible for your care. We're responsible for clothing you and feeding you, but we're equally as responsible for your mental well-being as well. So, and Mommy and Daddy have both fully accepted that responsibility. So don't ever think that you are burdening us when you want to talk about things like this. We're always here to listen. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about some of the reasons that people wind up feeling like a burden. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're talking about feeling like a burden. And now we're going to be talking about the reasons behind people feeling like a burden. And this research comes from a website called BetterHelp.com. So our feelings contribute to our reality. If you feel like a burden, you will have to work through your feelings to see your true worth. However, working through those feelings may not always seem easy, as it requires challenging your thoughts and facing your emotions. Here are a few reasons you may be feeling like a burden. And one of the main ones, the first one we have here, is low self-esteem and confidence. People who suffer from low self-esteem may believe that they aren't worth anything or are burdensome, especially if this is a belief that has been solidified over time. If you suffer from low self-esteem, it helps to remember that you can overcome that belief and work toward being more confident. For some, low self-esteem is something that is experienced on its own. For others, however, low self-esteem and self-confidence may be a symptom of a mental illness.
Anxiety disorders are another reason you may feel like a burden. If you struggle with anxiety, you may be worried that your symptoms are troublesome to those around you, or that people may leave you because of them. While these beliefs are not rooted in reality, they are very real to the person experiencing them, and such beliefs may worsen anxiety. However, Worrying about what others think of you does not always signify an anxiety disorder. To help you better understand if you're dealing with anxiety, here's a list of symptoms associated with this category of mental illness. Feeling as though you're constantly on edge, feeling fatigued and having difficulty concentrating or following through with tasks, being irritable and angry, experiencing muscle tension and random pain, worrying frequently, or having issues sleeping. Some anxiety disorders also include panic attacks, which can include symptoms such as heart palpitations, sweating, intense feelings of dread and fear, and shaking or trembling. If you believe that you have an anxiety disorder, you'll want to seek help from a licensed therapist. Therapy can help alleviate the symptoms of an anxiety disorder. It can also help you process the emotions associated with feeling like a burden.
There's also depressive disorders to worry about. Individuals suffering from depression may also feel like a burden. Depression is a mental disorder that affects mood and self-perception, which can lead you to believe negative things about yourself. Symptoms of depression include feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, and sadness or numbness, sleeping too little or too much, having little appetite or eating more than usual, which can be accompanied by weight loss or gain, feeling fatigued and lethargic, which can cause you to speak and move more slowly than usual, difficulty concentrating and maintaining focus, no desire or motivation to do daily tasks or engage in previously enjoyed activities, agitation, anger, or irritation, and frequent thoughts of death or dying. If you are experiencing symptoms of depression, please seek help immediately, especially if you're thinking about suicide or believe that you are at risk of harming yourself. And we're also going to be providing the National Suicide Prevention Line, which is 1-800-273-8255.
Just as anxiety or depression may contribute to feeling like a burden, so may other mental disorders, such as bipolar disorder or an eating disorder. And you do not have to have a mental disorder to feel like a burden. Dealing with a health issue that makes you rely on others can lead to the same thing. Whatever's causing you to feel this way, support is available. So, of those symptoms and of those contributing factors that we talked about, have you experienced any of these? And we can go down that list again. So, low self-esteem or confidence, is that something that's ever been an issue for you?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I've had issues recently with my self-esteem. For the most part, in some cases, it's pretty good, but in other cases, it's not so good.
Okay.
My inner critic is very... Let's say it gives the worst side of criticism.
You are very harsh on yourself. You're probably your harshest critic, and I think we've established that over time.
Yeah, so low self-esteem and confidence has probably been one of the biggest factors in me kind of believing that I'm somewhat of a burden to people, mainly because I don't really believe in myself.
So what about anxiety disorder? So when we started this podcast, one of the very early episodes we talked about was anxiety. And it was something that you seemed to show symptoms of. But once we got kind of down deep into the weeds on it, I don't think we thought that you were. What do you think? I mean, do you suffer from anxiety? Do you suffer from panic attacks or anything like that? Are you placed in situations where you feel a great deal of anxiety?
I mean, I definitely don't feel any of the extreme side effects that come with it, especially the physical ones. It's just, on occasions, there are some times where I feel intense amounts of anxiety, and at points I don't really know how to deal with them.
Okay. Now, do you feel overwhelmed under those situations?
Most of the time, yeah. I definitely don't want to say that I, like, it would be like panic attacks, but I would kind of be overcome from the anxiety and really wouldn't know how to deal with it.
And what do you usually do in those situations?
Try distracting myself for the most part. I try.
Okay, that's a valid technique.
Yeah. I try thinking of something different. I try doing something different to get my mind off of it. Hopefully, to kind of forget about it for a moment.
And that kind of goes back to the mindful meditation we talked about a few podcasts back, where when you have those feelings, those thoughts that are overwhelming you, fill your brain with something else. Distract yourself away from it. You sometimes, when you come back to look at what's causing that anxiety later after you've taken a break, sometimes it's not nearly as overwhelming as you originally thought it was.
Yeah.
How about depressive disorders? I know we did a podcast on depression as well, and we thought you were suffering from some of those symptoms. Do you get depressed?
Sometimes.
Do you get depressed or do you get sad? There's a difference between the two.
Probably sad.
And I think we all get sad. Considering the world today, it's kind of hard not to get sad at times.
Yeah.
So you do experience some of these. How do you think you handle these things overall? Do you feel you're more like a burden these days? Do you feel less like a burden these days? Do you feel like you're making progress?
I've been trying to make progress. I've started feeling a little less like a burden on you guys, probably because I've started becoming slightly more independent. And I've been somewhat able to deal with some of my emotions, but even at points I do have to come to you, and at those points I do sometimes feel like a burden. As for certain things like sleep, I've started getting a lot better. I haven't really had too many issues sleeping recently, and when I do, I try not to bother you guys about it. And if it gets to a point where it is going to be a bit bad, then I will come to you,
right,
just in case.
So when you come, you say sometimes when you feel it gets to the point where you have to come to us, you feel like a burden. Is that because it's gotten to the point that you can't deal with it and you need help, or is that because mom or your daddy make you feel like a burden?
Probably more this first option, because I know I can reside in you guys, and I personally don't really know how to deal with it, so I don't really know if I have any other choice other than just, suffering through it, and I don't really want to have to deal with that.
Sure, yeah. Okay. So we're going to take our last break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some tips and tricks on how to stop feeling like a burden. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back. Today we're talking about teens and how people and teens feel like a burden. So now we're going to talk about how to stop feeling like a burden, so things are good again. Yay.
We always try to end the show on a high note.
Yeah. Now that we've reviewed some of the issues that may be causing your current state of mind, let's take a look at some ways to overcome feeling like a burden to friends and family members. So first up, we have building up your self-esteem. One great way to start working toward a life in which you do not feel like you're burdening others is to build your self-esteem so you can recognize your value as a person. When we feel as though we have no value, it's hard to live our best lives. Fortunately, you can build your self-esteem up and become more confident about who you are. And here are a few ways to get started. Repeat positive affirmations and point out things you love about yourself. Create words of encouragement and kind reminders for yourself. Spend more time with the people who make you feel loved and appreciated. Do things you excel at. Set achievable goals and tasks and complete them. Challenge negative thoughts when they appear and replace them with positive ones. Improve your current lifestyle by cultivating healthier habits. Refuse to compare yourself to others and focus only on your personal journey. Be kind to yourself and remember that no one is perfect. And finally, focus on your mental health and wellness.
Improving your relationships is another technique to help deal with feeling like a burden. Sometimes all we need is one person's reassurance that we're not a burden. However, fear or uncertainty can prevent us from reaching out. To combat these feelings of low self-esteem, try expressing how you're feeling to those closest to you. Speak openly to those you trust and let them reassure you. Focus, too, on improving those relationships so that there's a greater trust and better communication. When you feel actively loved and appreciated by another person, you're less likely to feel like a burden. If you don't have someone you can trust to be open with, consider speaking with a licensed counselor.
And right now, the final one we have is getting help with mental illness. As we mentioned before, low self-esteem is a symptom of a number of mental disorders. If you are struggling with anxiety, depression, or another mental disorder, reaching out to a licensed therapist is an important first step. Therapy can help you cope with low self-esteem and other symptoms as well, so you can live the best life possible. When we think of therapy, we usually think of in-person sessions in an office at a nearby location. However, especially when you aren't feeling great, there are times when it's difficult to attend in-person therapy. This is where online counseling comes in.
Feeling like a burden can greatly impact your self-perception and mental health. However, these feelings are rarely justified or true. If you're feeling like a burden to those around you, therapy can help you understand just how worthy and loved you truly are. So with that in mind, when you have felt like a burden, have you used any of these, or have you found that any of these techniques have been at all helpful for you?
Well, because I do somewhat have slightly lower self-esteem, I guess I'll kind of talk about some of the ways they express that and see what ones I've done. Repeat positive affirmations and point out things you love about yourself. I know my strengths and weaknesses. I have repeatedly tried telling myself that, hey, I know I'm a straight A student. I know I'm good at this. I don't know if it works. I just do it, so.
And this is something that Mommy and I try to do, to kind of point out to you that, because a lot of times the things that tend to bring you down are scholastic issues.
Yeah.
Which you don't have, but you have this perception that you do.
Yeah.
So, I think Mommy and I trying to provide that positive reinforcement of, okay, you got a 96, you didn't get 100, it's okay, And when we've had these discussions, you do seem to calm down and relax a little bit. You're not nearly as uptight. So I do think they do help.
Yeah.
I don't know if you doing it yourself is as effective.
Yeah.
But I think with those around you providing you support, you're big on support. And I think our family, for the most part, tends to be very supportive, and that helps.
Yeah.
How about, creating words of encouragement and reminders for yourself?
I've never really thought of that, and I've never really done it, so...
That might be something we have to give it a try and see if it works.
Yeah. Spend more time with the people who make you feel loved and appreciated. I do that.
Well, you didn't have a choice during the pandemic. I mean, Mommy and Daddy were here, and you couldn't go anywhere, so...
I mean, yeah.
Do the things you excel at. What do you excel at? Give me top 3 things that you excel at.
Art... Probably any form, mostly.
Sure. I would say research. You do a fantastic job researching these podcasts.
Yeah, research. Let's see, what else? Would gaming be something I'm good at?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Those are all good things. And these are the things that, maybe you need to do more of that. Maybe you need to, come up with more lists. Instead of stopping at 3, let's go to 5 next time. And then let's go to 7. And, you keep hammering those home and you realize, you're a pretty, wonderful individual.
Yeah. And art's probably the biggest thing that I've done that I can relate to, because whenever I draw or come up with a story or play some type of music, it's always a way I'm like, oh wow, I actually really like this.
Right.
I make an art piece I really like. I come up with a really cool idea for a story that I really like. I play a song really well.
Yeah. How about relationships? What do you do to improve, or do you do anything to improve relationships?
I've been trying to talk with all my friends and, trying to keep up with them.
That's one that's probably just a situational struggle at this point in time, but I think your involvement in marching band is significantly improving that and expanding that relationship pool by exposing you to more people that you can hang around with that have common interests.
Yeah, the thing is, I've actually started really connecting with one of the veterans, Gabe. We've actually started talking a bit more, and by the end of yesterday's practice, he actually said that I was doing really well for a rookie.
That's good.
So,
see, and getting praise from someone who's been, with a program for a while now, it's got to be uplifting.
Yeah.
So there are things that you can do, and again, for the listening audience out there, if these techniques don't work, and if you find that you're running into issues, there's help out there. There are, we already gave the number for the suicide prevention hotline. You can definitely call there, even if it's, if you need help, call. If they can't help you, they can direct you to someplace that can. You have counselors at school that are qualified to help you. You have a family doctors that can put you in touch with people that can provide the help that you need. There are free services out there that you can call that are helplines that can help you. It's not difficult to find the help that you need these days. We're very fortunate in the time that we live in now where there is so much help that's out there. Mm-hmm. Just a few years ago, you might not have found nearly the kind of help that you have now, and it may have been a struggle to get it. But you have to have the motivation to go out there. You have to have the motivation to want to talk about it. And maybe you're not comfortable going to a professional. You have to find somebody that you trust. Is it a friend? Is it a loved one? Besides mom and daddy, who else would you talk to about issues?
Probably some of my friends. Mariah probably being the main one, since I've known her for the longest.
Right.
And since she is around my age, I'd probably be the most comfortable talking to her about issues, because maybe she's faced something similar.
And a lot of times, the way that you start a conversation like this, because a lot of people don't know how to approach the conversation. Sometimes it might just be questions. If you're feeling depressed, it might be, Have you ever had a feeling where you're just overwhelmed with sadness for reasons that you don't understand? And that alone could be the icebreaker for you. You don't have to come out and say, hey, I'm depressed. What can I do? It doesn't have to be something that direct.
Yeah.
But trying to understand how you feel, people accomplish that best by asking questions and bouncing those questions off of someone else. That's kind of how you start a conversation. You go back and forth because you never know. The interesting thing about that is the person that you're confiding in may have the same problems that you're running into too. They might be afraid to talk about it. And you starting that conversation with them may inadvertently be helping them deal with the problems that they're running into. Because everyone deals with these things. And that's the one thing I think we kind of need to emphasize here. You've dealt with feeling like a burden. I've dealt with feeling like a burden. Different age groups, different genders, different generations, different circumstances entirely. So everybody goes through these things. Everyone has self-esteem issues at some point. Everyone feels depression. Don't think that you're the only person that goes through this. Everybody does at some point in time. They may have, the person you're talking to may have gone through it already and may be a good shoulder to lean on, may have some advice for you, may be going through it now, and you may be mutually benefiting each other by trying to talk about it. Don't ever feel isolated that this is the only thing, you're the only person that this is happening to, because it happens to everybody. And, most people don't want to deal with it because society kind of, stigmatizes people. And it's less so these days than it has been in the past. Fortunately, people have acknowledged the significance of mental health and you're less stigmatized in society today about it, which is a good thing. When I grew up as a teen, you didn't talk about these things. You didn't talk about your feelings. You weren't allowed to have feelings when you were a kid, not if you were a boy. The gender roles were so clearly defined, 30 years ago that you boys were tough and girls were the emotional ones. And if the two mixed, there was a problem. So it was a very different world back then. And to look back in hindsight now, it's kind of a relief to see that things have progressed as far as they have. That's not to say that we're where we need to be.
Yeah.
There's definitely room to maneuver.
Yep.
Do you find that any of the guys that you talk to or that the friends that you've had in school, are they more outgoing, more open about feelings and stuff, or do you really not have those conversations?
I sometimes have conversations with some of my younger friends, particularly Lindsay, whenever she does go through slightly more emotional states. And I try to give her what I felt, what I learned on how I was feeling around the time I was her age, and, trying to help her out in the best way I can.
Right. And, that is what this podcast was designed to do. It was specifically for you, with the hope that maybe we could help some other people out there with some of the things that we went over.
Mm-hmm.
So, hopefully we're helping people out. If people want to contact us, we'll be more than happy to listen, certainly confidentially if people want to go that route. But, if you need someone to talk to, I think we're fairly reasonable individuals here that would be happy to listen and at least listen.
Yeah.
I can't promise anything else. We're not professionals. We can't provide you professional help, but, we're certainly happy to listen. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to take our final break. We're going to come back real quick. We'll get your closing thoughts and finish up with the podcast business.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back. Go for your closing remarks.
Alright, so to everyone out there, I just wanted to let everyone know that it's alright if you feel like a burden. Like we mentioned before, everyone can go through it at some point. There's always going to be a moment where everyone can go through questions of low self-esteem, feelings of sadness or depression, and just know that you're not alone. And in a lot of cases, it's better to open up to people than stay silent and keep it all closed off. Even if they can't provide you with a solution, in a lot of cases, you don't really need a solution. A lot of times, you just need someone that'll listen to you.
Amen to that. Sage advice as always.
Thank you.
Before we go, I do want to invite folks to subscribe to the podcast. Once again, you can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions of all of our podcasts can be found listed as Insights into Things. Any place you can get a podcast, basically. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, etc. We would also encourage you to write in, give us your thoughts, give us your suggestions for topics. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things. You can get high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream on Twitch 5 days a week at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. If you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a monthly Twitch Prime subscription. We'd love it if you threw it our way. It helps us pay the bills. Audio versions of this podcast can be found on the web at podcast.insightsintoteens.com. You can get us on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast or at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can get links to all those and more on our website at insightsintothings.com.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast hosted by you and my brother Sam.
Well done. And I think that's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 122, Return to School During COVID. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my grateful and cheerful co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. How was your week this week?
It's been all right.
Boring. I could tell because every time I talk to you over the phone from work, you seem to be very bored.
Well, gotta, enjoy it while it lasts, you know.
That's right. You'll be going back to school soon, hence the reason for this podcast.
Yeah.
So it's about that time for kids to head back to school. We thought that COVID was just going to be a bad memory by now, but it seems it's here to stay for a while longer. So how do your kids feel about going back to school in the time of COVID? How do you as a parent feel? And how can we make the most of the situation while still trying to keep our family safe and mitigate any anxiety we might have under the current climate? That's our topic today. Before we dive into it, though, I would invite our audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can get audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions of all the network podcasts can be listed as Insights into Things. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much any place you can get a podcast. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things, on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast, or on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings, where you can get links to all those on our website at insightsintothings.com. Ready to get started?
Sure.
All right. So returning to school during COVID. So the research for this topic comes from the Cleveland Clinic. They say after the challenges of last year, kids finally get to be kids again. This upcoming school year means being reunited with friends, having some sort of regular schedule again, and finally having the chance to show off those new clothes, backpacks, and clever school supplies. Good for them and good for the parents, right? While there are still concerns about keeping kids safe from the latest COVID-19 variants, at least parents won't have to worry about teaching Common Core math or listening to lessons in between conference calls.
Unfortunately, some kids might be a little apprehensive about going back. For them, home meant a safe haven from several stressors that they faced at school. On the other hand, kids who are excited about returning to the classroom will now have to adjust to learning with COVID-19 protocols in place. Either way, the transition back to school might be a little stressful for your child.
So let's stop right there for a second and let me ask you, how do you feel about going back to school? Because all of last year and the second half of the year before, you were at home, schooling at home. So how do you feel about going back to school in person?
I probably would feel a little better if I wasn't going into my freshman year of high school.
Yeah, that does complicate things, doesn't it?
Yeah, like not only is it a transition to an entire school, but freshman year is a lot different than 7th and 8th grade, and a lot of changes are going to take place there.
You're right. And just in general, there's changes, but I think they're good changes, and I think you'll be able to cope with them. But do you have any anxiety about COVID-19 and being around other people?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really been around people that much in the past year, and while I am vaccinated, I still have, like, anxiety of people in a way. I know I used to be like socially awkward when I was before it even happened, and now it's kind of started growing to the point where I'm kind of afraid to be around people physically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are getting to that point, and it's one of those things we're going to have to learn to deal with for a little while longer.
Yeah, and it's a pretty scary thing when Mommy, the most extroverted person out of all of us, is afraid to talk to people and doesn't really want to be bothered at work.
Yeah, well, you're right. You know, it's an adjustment. So they do talk about change. They say while good change can also be stressful, in general, going back to school is a big change. It's a whole new setting, especially for kids who are going either from elementary school to middle school, or like you, from middle school to high school, says pediatric psychologist Vanessa Jensen. It's a whole new world, and all of a sudden, they're expected to know what they're doing. It's a huge shift from being in their little space at home to now being in this world of back to school.
So, how do you recognize when your child is having a tough time? If you're not sure if your child is having a hard time with the transition back to school, think about how they normally act when they're stressed and look for those behaviors. For example, if your child gets headaches or stomach aches when they're anxious, you'll know that school is stressing them out should they start having them more frequently. We tend to go towards certain behaviors when we're stressed. My suggestion is for parents to think about what their child does when they get stressed in a new situation, she says. Think about the behaviors that they usually revert to, whether it's hiding in the background of a small group or acting out and trying to be the funny kid. Once you recognize what they tend to do under stress, that's probably what you're going to see as they enter into a new situation.
So what do you think are some of your stressor signs that are kind of tells that you're a little freaked out?
Let's see.
You do have breakdowns.
Yeah, breakdowns are probably the biggest thing, but that's kind of an obvious sign.
Right. I mean, everyone who has breakdowns is kind of an obvious sign, but do you feel physically ill? Do you get stomach aches? Do you get headaches?
Sometimes I have a harder time breathing because I feel like I somewhat hyperventilate sometimes whenever I'm stressed, so that's probably kind of one of the physical attributes I kind of associate myself with whenever I feel anxious.
I can see that.
There are some points where I get headaches, typically to the point if I do have a freak out, sometimes afterwards, if it was really bad, I would have a headache.
Yeah. See, for me, when I'm freaked out, usually I'll talk more or I'll try to make more jokes, and it's all an attempt to try to calm myself down. Like this happens a lot at doctor's appointments, because I get freaked out going to the doctor. So I'll try to crack jokes. I'll try to, lighten the mood a little bit. I'll try to have conversations, change the subject, that type of thing. So anytime I'm doing that, I know I'm starting to have a little bit of anxiety,
There are some other attributes I think I might kind of associate myself with. One would probably be like the opposite of what you're doing, and it's like I kind of stay silent.
Right. You pull back into yourself there and try to like extricate yourself from the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd also sometimes like fiddle with my hands or do something to distract myself.
And a lot of people do that, sort of that nervous twitch type thing. Yeah. So we're going to have to keep an eye on these things. I think there's a certain anxiety for all of us. I was dead set against you going back to school last year because of how bad things were. I don't know if things are much better now, so I'm not thrilled about you going back to school. The fact that you do have you did get the vaccine and you're fully vaccinated helps to alleviate a lot of that anxiety for me. I also want to see what kind of protocols they're doing at school, what kind of cleaning they're doing. Are they, they're going back and forth on mask mandates. Today, I understand there is a mask mandate for schools. So that makes me feel better that everyone's going to be wearing masks, but they're not always going to be wearing masks. And who's going to be enforcing that? And, I want to get a report from you as to what the school's doing and whether or not you feel comfortable at the school with the protocols that you're taking, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll try taking note of that.
Okay. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about helping teens make the adjustment. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com. Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about returning to school during COVID. So we're going to talk a little bit about helping teens make the adjustment. As parents, we remember our teenage years. Some of us were wild and loud. Some of us were shy and quiet. But regardless of our personalities, most of us probably kept our crushes, our craziness, and our challenging times under wraps. Dr. Jensen advises us to keep that in mind when it comes to teens. While it's natural to want to know every single thing that's going on in your teen's life, prying or being overbearing will only make things worse. If your child has been able to handle things in general, give them some space. But if you're worried, you can always say things like, "You seem a little stressed. You know I'm around." Or, "Have you talked to your friends?" And if they have talked to their friends, you can always follow up with, "Well, you want to talk to me? I'm here." She calls this her raindrop theory. Basically, this is dropping little hints that your child can reach out to you should things become unbearable.
Dr. Jensen explains, you just put the little raindrops out there by saying, "You know I'm around," or "I'm going to be in my study if you want to talk." You put those little hints out there and kids will reach out when they feel comfortable, she says. Reassure them gently and gradually. If you overwhelm your child with questions, and I compared this to throwing buckets of water on them, they're going to think, "Whoa, I'm not going there." So give them some space. They know you're there. Just keep reassuring them that if things get bad, you'll be there for them. Now, we all know that some kids think their parents will never be able to relate to their teenage struggles. In cases like these, a cool aunt or uncle can help. Dr. Jensen says that you can sprinkle the raindrops in the direction of another adult that you and your teen trust, so they are encouraged to reach out to someone if they are having a tough time. Give them some room and let the raindrops flow. Let your teen know that you are available to talk, but if they're not comfortable with you for whatever reason, make sure they do have someone to talk to. You could say, "Aunt Susan is a good person to talk to," or "Uncle John asks about you all the time." This can create little trails to other people when your child is kind of quiet to you.
So how do you deal with this stuff? I know you talk to Mommy and I think we pretty much have an open line of communication. Are there things that you don't talk to Mommy and Daddy about? And you don't have to go into specifics, obviously, if you're not comfortable.
Well, I can think of one specific example. I mean, I've tried talking to you guys about it, but it's not the easiest topic for me to discuss with you guys.
Do you have someone that you can talk to about it?
I actually talked to Aunt Chris about this.
Okay.
When we went to visit her, so
you do have an outlet for it at least.
Yeah.
Did you find that helpful?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good. Now, do you have Aunt Chris's contact information if you wanted to talk to her any other time?
Yeah, I do. I have her on Facebook Messenger, so I can probably message her if I do need help with it.
Okay, well, that's good. So you at least have that outlet there that you can go to. Are there friends of yours that you think might not have someone else that they can talk to, or do they not feel comfortable talking to their parents about certain things?
I could kind of see it in one of my friends, maybe not being able to talk to their parents about certain things, and thus they kind of bring it to me.
So you are one of those outlets that they can talk to then?
I think so, yeah.
And they talk to you in confidence then?
Mostly, yeah.
That's good. I think it's important. We had talked about this last week with feeling like a burden and the therapeutic value of just being able to talk about things. But who you talk to about those things can be very important. Some people you don't feel comfortable talking about with certain subjects, and I can totally understand that. But that doesn't mean you don't talk about those subjects. That just means you kind of have to find someone that you can talk to about them.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to talk to Aunt Chris about the subject?
I kind of felt like she had much more knowledge on the subject than I think you guys did.
Okay.
For the most part, at least.
Well, and that's a brilliant reason for going to someone else if they're a subject matter expert on it.
Yeah.
And if it was helpful, then you made the right decision. Do you advise your friends to talk to other people about any of the issues that they're running into?
I have been trying to mention to them, if they do have issues, they can always talk to me or someone else if they do have problems. So
Okay.
I've kind of been steering them in that direction.
Now, when you're obviously going into high school now, in your middle school, did the teachers or your counselors make themselves available to have these kinds of discussions, or were they kind of distant?
I mean, I remember that the counselor had actually set up various appointments with all the kids, kind of like she'd like ask us questions about stuff and kind of get our opinions on everything, and was always like, if you ever need me, I'm here. So I definitely think we had a pretty supportive guidance.
Yeah, can you loan me $20?
Daddy, really?
Well, you have to understand, when I was in school, my guidance counselor was almost non-existent. I think I taught because I was in the same school for 6 years with the same guidance counselor. I started in 7th grade. And in 6 years, I think I may have seen them twice. Once when I got there, and then once when they set up some appointment. Because really all our guidance counselors did was tell us what we needed to do to get into college and where to take the tests and stuff like that. They really weren't there to provide much in the way of life guidance. How have your counselors done with that?
Honestly, when I had actually gone to the office the one time, I had actually seen like a message where it's like, everything they talk about in the room basically stays in the room unless it's harmful to you or someone else.
Which makes sense, because then they're legally obligated to get someone else involved. Like, for instance, if it's self-harm, suicide thoughts, something like that, they then have to bring in a professional for stuff like that. So have you ever thought to go to your counselor with any of the issues that you feel you need to talk about?
I mean, I probably should have, but most of the issues kind of came up during COVID, and I was never really in the building.
Okay.
I mean, I could have probably, scheduled a conference call, which I kind of did the one time, but it was mainly to schedule stuff.
Right, I remember that.
But I don't think I've ever really talked my issues about.
Okay.
I don't know, I just never really felt I needed to.
Right. No, I understand. Again, if they're not the right person that you feel comfortable with, even though it's their job, then they're not the right person, because whether it's their job or not, you ultimately need to be comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Do you feel you have an outlet now that you can go to, or that you have options if you have something you need to talk about?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Aunt Chris, you, my friends, that kind of stuff.
Good. It's important to have those options available to you. I don't ever want you to feel, if there's an issue you're not comfortable talking to us about and you don't have someone, let us know that you have an issue and we can help you find somebody.
Okay.
So, do you have any issues that you want to talk about regarding going back to school during COVID?
I mean, I have a ton of issues going back to school anyway.
And I'm not talking about the ones in general. I'm just talking about anything that's specific to COVID. Like, do you feel safe going back to school?
Not necessarily for the most part.
Okay. I think you're kind of in the same boat that I'm in with you going back to school.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that we need to see how they're handling it. The state of New Jersey is mandating some of these protocols now, which makes me feel a little bit better. But how the school's implementing those is really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of have to try it, give it a shot, and see where we're at. And, if after a few days when we've seen all the classrooms and we see what the protocols are like and how serious the school's taking them, we can make a determination of whether or not we feel safe or not there.
Okay.
And if we don't, we'll see what our other options are. Because if you don't feel safe, I'm not going to feel safe with you going, and I'm not going to have you, going 5 days a week into an environment that you're not safe in.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but we have to get in there and see what the practices are like right off the bat. Okay. So we're going to take another break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about dealing with rebellion against COVID-19 rules, because we seem to be seeing a lot of that in the media lately. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about returning to school during COVID-19. And now we're going to talk about how to deal with rebellion against COVID-19 safety rules.
You rebel scum.
Oh my god. Why did I not see that coming? Anyway, you've been doing everything you can to keep those under your roof safe for well over a year. Your child has been on board for the most part. But one thing is inevitable. Thanos.
I'm
sorry.
Am inevitable.
Look, if you make those references,
Go right ahead. Pop culture references are welcome in this podcast.
Okay. They're going to have friends who are still living in 2019. No masks, no social distancing, and no regard for COVID-19 whatsoever. What do you do if your child starts challenging the rules? Dr. Jensen suggests helping them understand that staying safe is not just about them, but it's also about all the other people who they care about. Talk to your child about what you believe and where the family as a whole stands. Don't just talk about the risks to them. Talk about the risks of spreading COVID-19 to those around you. You could say something like, "You know it's important to our family to stay safe for all kinds of reasons, but more importantly, you have grandma to think about, your dad and your sister." For teens and tweens, it comes down to helping them realize that right now is not the time to just focus on themselves. This is difficult because these age groups can be self-focused. They also can be easily influenced by their peers. But again, you want to encourage them to make the best choices for themselves and your family, especially when you're not around, she says.
And if the going gets tough, and the going has been tough for over a year now, you got to get help. Raising kids during a pandemic hasn't been easy on anyone. When parents try to push through the tough times or troubleshoot everything on their own, the process can be even more challenging and draining. Instead of going it alone, Dr. Jensen advises reaching out to the people in your children's orbit. This includes teachers, coaches, their pediatrician, and even the school counselor, like we talked about. She also recommends taking care of yourself first and foremost. You're not going to be any good to your kids if you aren't taking care of yourself, and you're the biggest role model your kids have. We all think that kids look to their peers for role models, but they do rely on their parents for the big things. So the best role model you can be is the person who takes care of themselves and then takes care of their kids, she says. And if you have questions about how your child's doing, try talking to their teachers, coaches, scout leader, and other important people in their life. Ask what they're seeing, then talk to your child. If things are beyond your control, reach out to your pediatrician's office for referrals. Your guidance counselor can also make referrals for you if you need more help. So with that in mind, how do you have you run into people? I mean, you haven't run into a lot of people at all. None of us have, but have you encountered people that are rebelling against the COVID-19 protocols?
I mean, the good thing is I don't think any of my friends are rebelling against it, which is good.
Right.
So that's
absolutely.
But I'm pretty sure at some point I will encounter people who are rebelling against it. And well, that'll be fun, I guess.
How you've been going out of the house for marching band now. How has marching band been handling? Because I think that's probably the best barometer we have right now with how school's going to be. How have you felt with marching band?
I felt all right. We always, keep our distance, and now there's a mandate where whenever we're inside, we wear masks, and people have been doing that.
Now, you weren't doing that before the state mandate, though, right?
No, but I would typically kind of stay away. People were kind of spread out for the most part, so it was still kind of all right.
Okay. So, before that mask mandate, was there a large majority of people that were voluntarily wearing masks? Because I know we were sending you with one. I know it's kind of hard to wear a mask when you're playing a musical instrument that you have to blow into.
I did see one or two people who would wear masks whenever they were around.
And that's kind of what I run into at work. Most of the people that I have at work don't wear masks. They don't really worry too much about social distancing. They kind of did last year, where, the company itself forced people to spread out at the lunchroom. We staggered our lunch hours. So we kind of forced that extra caution. And I don't know, I guess when the state lifted some of its requirements, we kind of laxed off on some of that stuff. Right now, I'm probably the only person in the front office who wears a mask. I don't wear it while I'm in my office because, I have my own office. I have 2 air filters that pretty much cycle the air in my office every 10 minutes or so. So I'm very comfortable in my office with clean air. But anytime I step out of my office, the mask goes on, but I don't see anybody else in the office that wear masks when they're moving around. So that's kind of discouraging for me. What about in school? Because you've been going into the school itself for marching band stuff. Have they had like barriers up and hand sanitizer and the normal stuff you would expect?
I haven't seen any barriers. Pretty sure there are hand sanitizers in certain rooms. We haven't really been staying in the areas, but I do remember there was summer school, and one time during band camp we ended up passing them, and I didn't really see anyone wearing a mask.
Now, did you see that they were spread out in the classroom at least?
I never really got a glimpse of them inherently in the classroom.
Okay.
I haven't really been able to see much of the protocol going on.
So we're going to have to wait until you start school. How about when we go out in public? Do you notice whether people are wearing masks or distancing and stuff?
Yeah, and for the most part, wherever we go, people are wearing masks, or at least they're distancing themselves from each other.
And we are highly restricted in where we go, when we go, and, if we wind up something, like we go out to eat, for instance, and if we walk into a restaurant that's very crowded and obviously not adhering to any rules, we'll turn around and walk out.
Yeah.
So any restaurants that we stay at, we make sure that they're seating people at safe distances and so forth. What else have you done outside of the house? We've done kind of our mini vacation, our day trip vacation. You've gone shopping, right? How have people been at the supermarket and stuff?
They've been all right. There have been a decent amount of people wearing masks. People are still social distancing, and the last time we actually went to BJ's for the first time, like, people used to just line up, and then, like, when someone was done at the self-checkout register, another person would go, and, like, we were all distancing themselves. And the last time we went, it was the first time where people, like, actually got in line again behind the registers, which was kind of a strange change that I kind of had to get used to, I guess.
So were they at least distancing themselves at the registers or no?
I sort of.
Okay.
Not as much as before, but they still seemed like they were somewhat distancing.
How do you feel about the safety rules of COVID? Are you going to continue to wear a mask even if it's not mandated?
Yeah, probably.
And you're okay with the social distancing and all that stuff?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of made me want to kind of stay away from people for the most part, which may or may not be a good thing.
Now, have you been going out of the house and playing with any of the kids in the neighborhood?
No, not really.
Okay, so you're still maintaining that strict level of COVID protocol now.
Yeah.
How do you think that's affected you, though? Do you think being in the house so much has had a negative effect on you?
I mean, the fact that I used to just be, like, antisocial before, and now kind of not even wanting to meet people in person at this point, that's probably the main negative side effect that I've kind of gotten.
So it kind of drove that antisocial side of you then?
To the point where now I'm actually kind of afraid of people, and I kind of have a phobia of people in a way.
So you don't have, like, mommy, for instance. Mommy's kind of itching to get back to things because of that extrovert that she is. And I think the protocols, while she's doing a very good job adhering to them, I think the protocols chafe on people like mommy who need to have that social interaction. It's caused cancellations of a lot of the things that she wants to do and she enjoys doing. And a lot of the things that she does are those support things that she needs, and she hasn't been able to get that. So I think that's been a problem for mommy. Have you had anything like that where you've wanted to do something but you can't, and it's caused some consternation?
I mean, it used to be not being able to see my friends, and now I've kind of learned to realize that, and now I'm really only, like, speaking with my friends on the phone, or the one actual time I was able to socialize where we were, like almost a block away from each other just screaming.
Yeah. But you are still socializing with your friends through technology at this point. You're not completely isolating yourself.
I mean, yeah.
That's good. Well, and I think that's kind of been our savior during this whole ordeal, has been technology. You know, a lot of people have taken advantage of technology to keep those Zoom calls going and the phone calls and FaceTime and, you know, all the stuff that people have used to keep in touch. It hasn't been an adequate alternative, but I think it's one of those things where you're making the most out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
So I think that was all we had today. We're going to take a quick break, come back, we'll get your closing remarks, and finish up with the podcast business.
Alrighty.
All right. Go for your closing remarks.
Alrighty, so to all of the teens and parents out there, going back to school during COVID is going to be hard on pretty much everyone. Whether it be just having to go back to school after pretty much not having a year of school last year, or just having to deal with the COVID-19 protocols and everything like that. No matter what the reason, it's gonna probably be stressful on everyone, and, well, we'll get through it. We've so far gone through almost an entire year of this. We'll probably be able to get through the rest of it. COVID will probably be around for a while, but it is getting better. And if you are feeling these, if your child does have these anxious thoughts, make sure they have a good support system, and make sure they're also following COVID rules so that COVID-19 can be over sooner rather than later.
Okay, and we're all wishing for that, that's for sure.
Yep.
Before we do go, I do want to once again invite our audience to subscribe to the podcast. Audio versions of this podcast can be found listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions of all of our podcasts are available listed as Insights into Things. You can find them anywhere you can get a podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, and so forth. I would also invite folks to write to us, give us your feedback, give us some show suggestions. We did start putting some new show schedule together. We're working on some new shows for us. We've got a couple already in the pipeline, but we're always looking for suggestions on new topics to talk about, the stuff that affects our audience. We'll do the research, we'll write it up, we'll address it and talk about it, and hopefully we can help some folks out. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things. You can get high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can find audio versions of this podcast on the web at podcast.insightsintoteens.com. You can get us on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast or on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings, or links to all those on our website at insightsintothings.com. And
don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
Which we'll be recording this weekend, so we'll have a new one, new Insights into Tomorrow next week.
Yay!
So, but that's it for today. Thank you for listening and watching. That's another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 123, Back to School Off the Cuff. I am your host, Joseph Whalen, and my beautiful and intelligent co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. So this week, we're going to kind of switch things up a little bit, right? So we've been doing, kind of topical stuff, some hard-hitting topics from week to week here. We did miss last week. We did not do a podcast last week. Why did we not do a podcast last week?
I had my first marching band performance at the football game.
Right. Our entire schedule was disrupted last week because of the storms that blew through.
Yep.
The remnants of Hurricane Ida. And we actually had a tornado blow through our town. Fortunately for us, it was on the other side of town. Unfortunately for the folks on the other side of town, it was on their side. But that wound up causing some schedule disruptions. So we'll talk about those. We'll talk about the storm a little bit. We're going to talk about just general things. This was your first week back to school, first week in high school, right? So we're going to talk about some of the stuff with school, some of the issues you ran into. And then we're going to talk about some concerns, certainly some concerns that I have, maybe some concerns that you have, and just kind of talk through some of the stuff because it's been the last 2 weeks have been kind of a emotional roller coaster, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So things have been crazy hectic, emotions have been running high, expectations are running high. So I think it's time, this is a good opportunity for us to kind of tone it down a little bit. Usually our podcasts are directed at our audience to try and help them out. But I think we kind of need a little decompression podcast for ourselves this week. So this week's podcast is for ourselves, and maybe our listeners can benefit from it as well. Before we get into all of that, though, I would want to invite our listening and our viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions of the podcast are listed as Insights into Things. We are listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much any place you can get a podcast these days. I would also invite you to reach out to us, give us your feedback, give us some suggestions for topics for shows. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can get us on Twitter at insights_things. On Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast, or Instagram, we're at instagram.com/insightsintothings, where you can get links to all of those and more on our website at insightsintothings.com. Shall we get started?
We shall.
All right, let's do it. So first up, let's talk about the storm for a little bit, because I'll be honest with you, I'm still a little freaked out about the storm itself. So we had remnants of Hurricane Ida blow through.
Yep.
Tons and tons of rain. We had flooding all over the place. But what probably had the most direct effect on us were a string of tornadoes that came through, one of which came right through our town. And we happened to be huddled down in the basement at the time, like we're supposed to be. And we have security cameras outside of our house. We have security cameras inside of our house too, but that's a different story. We had cameras outside our house, and when the tornado was actually blowing through town, I could actually see the cloud mass of the tornado. I couldn't see the funnel cloud, but I could see the cloud mass of the tornado in the distance while you guys were downstairs with me.
Wow.
Which was very scary for me. What are your impressions of having to sit down there and listen? Because we had the news on, the weather was going, we were getting all the alerts on our phones and everything. Give me your impressions of what you thought.
Well, first of all, I'm not one for storms. I normally can't even handle lightning storms, because I genuinely just get freaked out by lightning and thunder. I don't like those kinds of storms. And we had a lot of it during this storm. And whenever we go into the basement, I know it's a pretty strong storm. Having to listen to the news while we were kind of all huddled. In a way, I kind of wanted to somewhat block it out, even though I knew it was going on. I kind of just wanted to keep myself calm for the most part and just say that everything was kind of going to be okay. Hopefully,
okay.
You know.
And were you successful?
I feel I was. I definitely think it helped to keep me calm throughout the storm. I felt a bit better keeping after that. And at least, although I knew what was going on, I at least tried to center my focus around something different, kind of like how I normally do when things kind of scare me. So.
Well, and we've been dealing with the aftermath of that storm. For instance, someone that I work with in another nearby town, their town was hit very hard. I mean, entire houses destroyed. And they had some damage to their house as well. Fortunately, they weren't hurt. Most of the people in their neighborhood that were affected by it weren't even in their homes at the time because they were away, which was fortunate. Mm-hmm. But to see the kind of power, like I'm not big on storms either. You know, I'm the type of person, I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, but I like having control over aspects of my life. And things that are completely random and outside of my control tend to scare me. Lightning, for instance. Like, I can take all the precautions in the world, but if a lightning bolt's going to hit me, there's nothing that I can do about it. And that randomness scares me. Tornadoes are the same thing, especially as powerful, because we usually don't get storms that are this powerful.
Yeah.
And in looking at some of the news coverage of it after the fact, that I had seen some really alarming statistics. One analysis had actually talked about the town that was near us called Mullica Hill that had gotten hit with a really powerful tornado. They said that debris from the houses in that town were thrown as far as 20,000 feet into the air and landed in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is about a 40-minute drive from us.
Wow.
That's how powerful the storm was that blew through. So it's really scary thinking that something like that came so close to us.
Yeah.
But fortunately, like I said, we came out of that. So without any issues or anything. But it did affect stuff in town. So your first performance for marching band was supposed to be Thursday. Tell us what happened with that.
It ended up getting pushed back due to the weather to Friday. Guessing they still had to work things out because the storm hit us on technically, yeah, it was Wednesday. And I was technically supposed to have another practice then, but we ended up ducking out because we knew the storm was coming, and I guess enough people ducked out to the point where they completely canceled it. And then on Thursday, around 1-ish maybe, Mommy got the notification saying that our first performance was moved to Friday because of the storm.
Right. So Wednesday, I had been watching the news, the weather forecast most of the afternoon, and I had texted Mommy and said, look, I don't want to send you to marching band practice because the worst of the storm was going to hit literally when you were showing up for marching band, and I didn't want to chance it. I'd rather have you home with us. So that's why you didn't go. And then we got a notification after Mommy notified your director that we weren't sending you. Shortly after that, he sent out a notification saying it was canceled. So I have to assume a lot of other parents had pulled their kids out too.
Yeah.
So they moved the football game, and this was the I guess opening game, the first game of the season for the high school, to Friday. And you had to be there for early to get set up and prep for the game and everything. Mommy and Daddy went to the game, which I was joking around saying that's the first high school football game that I've been to since I was playing high school football.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Tell us what your impression was of the performance. Tell us what you did and how you liked it.
So, basically, we were going to be playing in the halftime show, and we were only going to be performing the first movement.
First of three, right?
Yeah, first of three. And while we were in the stands for the first, second, and fourth quarter, we actually played stand tunes, which were basically just like tunes we kind of had that we were just going to be playing whenever someone scored or whenever the team like went out and stuff.
Like rally songs, wipe out, and crowd things to get the crowd into the game.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you like that?
Yeah. I didn't originally know all of the songs, but it was a nice way to keep me still kind of invested. And I did eventually start learning a lot of them, and it was actually kind of fun.
Now, the other thing you guys did was you played the national anthem at the beginning of the game, too, which was really well done. I have to say, I was really impressed with it.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel, getting to play the national anthem?
It was the first time I've ever actually played it. I've heard it multiple times, and that was kind of the first time I really played it, which was kind of nice. Now,
was the whole band there, or did you have some missing members?
I'm not sure, but there were a decent amount of people, so we still did stand tunes and the halftime performance.
So let's talk about the halftime performance. You guys weren't in full uniform. How were you guys dressed, and how did the whole performance go?
They'd given us marching band polos and told us to wear black pants and black shoes if we had them. So that was kind of the uniform we had. We also had our shirts tucked in to make us look slightly more in form, which I gotta say, I actually kind of like the polo.
Yeah, you looked really good in it. So everyone looked really good. It's a nice looking shirt.
Yeah. So preparing for the halftime show, we actually went back behind the stands and did some warm-up songs, and then we kind of got in line with partners for an arc because we had spaced it out before. We were tuned. Then by the time they told us to come out, we went into the arc in a unified form, played one of the lip slurs, and then went into getting ready for the halftime performance.
Now, Mommy and I both had an opportunity to watch from the stands the halftime performance, and it looks like you guys get about 12 minutes to perform at halftime, and didn't take, obviously, since you were only performing one of the three movements, you didn't take up the whole time. And what was amazing, really, was watching the pit crew get all that equipment out there and get set up in such a short time. It literally looked like a pit crew at a NASCAR race.
Yeah.
So total props to the pit crew for the dedication they had there.
Yeah, and I remember how long it would take for them to set up normally when we had actually performed it together with Pitt on Tuesday.
So how did you like the performance? Do you think you guys did well? Do you think you need improvement? Do you think you're ready for showtime at this point?
I mean, it was only the first movement, and I definitely say I think we could have done better, but overall for our first performance, I don't think it was all that bad.
Was there anything in particular that you found challenging or difficult? Like, this is the first time you performed in front of an audience, right? Mm-hmm. How was that? I mean, that's usually the biggest challenge in that first performance.
Yeah, I tried at my best not to really think about it too much and kind of just go through the sets in my head, which definitely did help. I definitely had to try, staying in form for the entire time. It'll be interesting to see how we put the entire show together because, you kind of need the endurance to do it the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah, the closest thing I think I've ever had was performing in concert choir in high school. And the advantage that I had was that was always indoors in the auditorium. So when you're up on stage, they've got all the stage lights on you, so you can't even see the audience. You're so blinded by the light. Mm-hmm. So they're out there, but you don't see them, so you don't get as nervous, I think. But you guys don't have that advantage. I mean, you guys are out there in the middle of the field. You've got an audience behind you. You've got an audience in front of you. did the band director give you any suggestions or ways to handle the nervousness or anything like that? Did he anticipate that?
I think he just told us. He never really like specifically said. He's just like, make sure you perform the sets right, and that's kind of it.
So just sort of stick to the plan, and you should be fine.
And to be honest, like the amount of like stuff we need to think about whenever we're moving, like getting into the right sets, using the right step sizes, making sure you're playing the music, it was enough to make us kind of stop thinking of. It was enough to at least make me kind of stop thinking about the audience that was there, and kind of, it was just a regular performance.
That's good. I mean, so it's almost automatic for you at that point because your brain's trying to do so many things at once.
Yeah.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, I did. I was really, my legs were kind of shaking in the beginning, and it honestly went by quicker than I expected.
So did anything unexpected happen, or did it kind of go sort of like you expected it to?
It went all right. No one tripped or got hit, which they actually said was a big feat for the first performance, especially considering the fact this is like the earliest they've ever performed.
Right.
So
now, was this the first time the entire band was together doing everything at once? Because I know Color Guard was out there with you too, right?
yeah, Color Guard had actually been with us a couple of times, and Pitt was only with us for Tuesday, I believe. So we had done it like once. We had done it like a couple of times all together, but it was nice doing it in front of the audience.
Nice. So it sounds like it was overall a pretty good experience then.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's take a little break, and we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about back to school. All right? We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com. Welcome back to Insights into Teens. We're going off the cuff today, talking a little bit about the last couple of weeks and kind of taking it easy this week. So let's talk a little bit about back to school. This was your first week back to school. You started on Tuesday. How did it start out? Give us an idea of how it started out.
So it kind of started out a bit more chaotic than I wanted. So first of all, we were going to be emailed our bus passes, so that, we knew what time to get on the bus and what bus we were taking. But Mommy never got the email.
Right.
And we believe it's because she didn't fill out one of the forms on Genesis, that she didn't even get a notification that she had.
Which was it was a last minute form, and she never got notified that she had to fill it out.
Yeah, so it was we were kind of worried on Monday, but the good thing was we actually had a neighbor who was also in high school, so we went to them, we got the time, and we figured, hey, everything was going to be okay. So I woke up, we got prepared, we went out, and basically whenever I would go to the bus, at least when I was in middle school, Mommy would drive me up, and I would just stand at the bus stop. So me and the other kid, Donovan, were kind of just standing out there waiting for our bus to come by. And a few minutes go by to the point where we kind of realize it's getting a bit late. It's getting close to 7, around the time that I'm supposed to be in school. And Donovan ends up actually going to my mom saying that apparently he had a friend who was also on the same bus, and he texted, like, what's going on, and his friend said that he was already at school.
Oh, boy.
So we missed the bus, kind of.
Okay.
So Mommy...
But there was a bus at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the good thing was Mommy was off that day, so she was able to just drop me off. And apparently we weren't the only ones who experienced that. In fact, traffic was jammed with people dropping their kids off.
So, but your bus ride home was okay, right? You didn't have any problems with that?
Well, I was able to get home, but I did kind of have some issues. So during phys ed, which was my last period, I decided that I needed to go and find out which bus I was going to take home. And I wasn't the only kid. There were 3 other kids who also were having issues. So, all 3 of us went over to the guidance office, and we're hoping to get our bus pass. But apparently we had to come earlier to get our bus passes, and, like, they couldn't give it to us at the end of the day, and when after the bell rang, they said, go up to the bus drivers and ask if they stop on your stop.
So you had to go survey the bus drivers to see if they stop at your bus stop.
Yeah, but the good thing...
What a disorganized mess.
But the good thing was, Mommy had heard from Donovan, that D10 was the bus he was supposed to take. So when I'd found D10, I asked if they had stopped on my bus. I didn't ask any of the other ones. They said yes, and I was able to get on and get home.
Wow. So that was day 1.
Well, at least with the buses.
So that was day 1 with the buses. Have the buses been okay since then?
Yeah, I learned yesterday that, so Donovan was supposed to get picked up around 6:35. It said on his bus pass. Apparently they pick us up at 6:25.
That's a significant difference.
Yeah. That's 10 minutes different. Like,
Yeah.
Did you expect them to get there, like, 10 minutes earlier than the actual time?
Apparently they do.
Yeah.
Okay. So steady bus schedule now at least, right?
Yeah, I'm able to take the bus. I was able to take the bus to school for yesterday and today, and I've been able to take it home each day.
Okay. So hopefully that problem is solved. So what was your overall impression so far this week? So you've got 3 days under your belt now. How's it been?
I think it's been all right. It's kind of complicated.
Well, of course it is. It's high school.
I mean, yeah.
We'll get to the issues in the next segment, but what's your initial impression? Is it manageable? Is it overwhelming? Is it scary? Is it straightforward? What's your first impression?
It sounds like it is manageable for right now, but that it's probably going to get a bit harder later on.
And that's probably what's going to happen, which is typical.
Yeah.
Or do you have any immediate concerns about any of your classes just from first impressions? I know your Spanish class has some interesting hall pass rules. Tell us about those.
So that's kind of one of the only classes that has mentioned it so far. Apparently, you're only allowed to go to the bathroom once a week in their class.
What kind of prison rules is that?
Yeah, and we were, like, given passes, and we only have 6 passes for the marking period.
Can you, like, sell them on eBay and make money or something off of them?
I mean, at the end of the marking period, if we have at least one that's not checked off, we get 5 extra credit points. So
Wow.
I guess we kind of make something from it.
That's a little draconian there.
Little
I
bit.
can't believe they're going that route.
I mean, yeah, I
For
definitely...
Spanish class, like, it's not even a class that's like physics or like your advanced math. It's Spanish class. It's like, I think your Spanish teacher's taking her job a little too seriously there. Anyway, so what about concert band? What happened with concert band? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, concert band ain't gonna happen this year.
So this one I kind of got a little riled up about on.
Yeah.
So you were told from your guidance counselor last year that if you wanted to be in concert band, you would have to sacrifice your lunch because it would be done at your lunch. So when you got your schedule a couple weeks ago, you didn't have concert band, but you did have lunch. So mommy reached out, found out that, well, you couldn't have concert band because it was the last period of the day and that's your gym period.
That was physics.
Physics. And there wasn't anything they could do about it. And I thought that was kind of unfair.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you were told one thing and then something else happened. So I wrote let's call it passionate letter to your guidance counselor and to the administrative staff of the school, to which I've still not gotten an acknowledgement, a reply. They've not told me off. I've not gotten anything, which tells me that as open and interested in communication as they pretended to be during orientation, they don't want to hear about problems. They only want to get pats on the back, apparently. So I'm guessing that's how school's going to go. And we're just going to have to deal with it at this point in time. And I'll have to find some other way. Maybe I have to reach out to the Board of Education instead of the principal and the vice principal, since I'm not getting anything from them. It was worth mentioning that this was something that you were supposed to get, you didn't get. And the reason you didn't get it became glaringly obvious when we went to orientation, and how there's almost zero focus on the arts from the school. And everybody seems to be focused on scholastic or focused on athletics, which really is a terrible disservice to the students of that school, because the likelihood of kids making anything out of themselves from a scholastic standpoint is statistically insignificant from a professional standpoint compared to scholastic or compared to a career in the arts. You are infinitely more likely to achieve a measure of professional success in the arts than you are as a professional athlete. And the only reason the school is focused on athletics is because it's a moneymaker for the school. And they're basically selling the kids education and future down the line so they can make a few bucks off of them. And it was very evident in the orientation when the athletic program got like 8 slides and you had maybe 1 or 2 slides that they just sort of blew through for the arts side of things. And it was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, and kind of thinking about it, I remember that they said they actually had a completely new weights area that was made for the school. And yet in marching band, we have to make donations for the student account.
Yeah, and that's the terrible thing. You look at the school and you have a new turf field. You have a new weight room. You have 2 gyms, do you have? And what do you have for a band room?
It's smaller than the one I had in middle school.
Which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And this isn't the first time that I'm going to complain about this, and I suspect that I'm going to be sending numerous letters and going to boards, parent-teacher meetings and school board meetings to talk about this, because what this school system is doing to their students is a crime. It really is. But anyway, I won't get on my soapbox about that here, although I already did. But let's come back off the soapbox. Let's talk about having friends in your classes. So you made a lot of friends in band, which was very helpful this summer. Kind of gave you a little bit of a head start going into school. How are you doing with friends per class at this point in time?
Well, I have someone who has 7 classes of the same ones as me at the same time.
That's pretty impressive.
I mean, yeah, that's never really happened before. Like, I have period 1, period 3, and by the time we have lunch in 5th period, we have all the same classes.
Right.
We basically are going to the same place after lunch.
Nice.
It's lunch.
You got a hall buddy now.
Yeah. And I guess being in the engineering program kind of does give me the advantage of kind of having the same people in my classes, because in 3 of my classes I have have the same class coming with me in at least 3 of my classes. So
how do you think that's going to help you out throughout the year? I know you've had let's see if I can talk. I know in the past you've had issues with being the only person in class that you knew. Like, you didn't know anybody else, and you found that difficult fitting in, getting put in teams with people you didn't know and stuff like that. How does it help when you're in classes with people that you know, or at least when you're in a class with new people, but those new people are in multiple classes with you? Do you find that comforting at all? Do you find it helpful?
yeah, that sounds pretty comforting, especially considering the fact that I definitely feel like I'm in place with them, and I know that we kind of go through similar experiences, we have similar classes, so it's definitely pretty comforting to know that I kind of have buddies that I might be able to stick with.
That's nice. And, in the event that at some point in time you get sick or they get sick, you just need to exchange contact information. You can bring homework assignments back and forth for them. You can have study time with them. It makes it so much easier when you've got a group of people that, that you have common ground with there, and you can ease into subjects. Or you may run into a situation where you get a lesson one day and you just don't get it. One of the other kids that you're friends with does, and then you can get together with them, and it alleviates a lot of that anxiety that you were having before. Like, you were having issues with 1 or 2 of your subjects. I know math last year, where you had a lesson that was given and you didn't get it on the first take. And a lot of that had to do with the barriers that you were running into being remote.
Yeah.
And you didn't have anyone to turn to. Like, mommy or daddy wouldn't have been much help to you. Having that that supply, that support system in place there is something that's going to help along those lines. And the other question I had was, how different is it for you being in school now with students rather than the remote learning you did for the last year and a half?
It is pretty different, because even when we had calls, video calls, it didn't really feel like I was really part of a class all that much. All we did was really comment for the most part. No one really ever wanted to show their faces other than the teachers, and no one really, turned off their mic besides in gym.
So do you think what you have now is a better environment to be learning in?
Maybe, maybe not. I'm not entirely sure right now. It might be better.
Jury's still out on that one then.
I mean, I wasn't one of the people who really had much of a problem for the most part with remote learning. And now having to go into physical learning, I don't think it will be that much of a problem, but, it's still early.
Sure. Okay. The last question I had was, how is your schedule? I know the one big concern kids have every year is, where are my classes, and am I going from one side of the campus to the other every time I have to change classes? How's your class scheduling now? Is it spaced to the point where you're not able to get from class to class in the amount of time, a lot of time between classes, or do you think it's pretty well balanced out?
I honestly think it's pretty well balanced out. I go from one hallway to another hallway that's actually very close to each other, and it's not that far of a distance. Then I go upstairs and I have 2 classes that are in the same hallway, and really it doesn't take all that much time to get there. And The only, commitments I need to really have are when I go to gym or when I go to the cafeteria, mainly because of how crowded it can get.
Okay. All right, well, that doesn't sound so bad.
But even then, it's not actually that bad. It's just, it takes a little longer to get there.
Right. Well, I know the last year that you were in your other middle school, you were kind of run ragged around that school because you were up, you were down, you were across, you were back, and you had a couple of classes where you really had to book it to get across to the next class.
Yeah, specifically, after I would have lunch, and after I had gym, were probably the times where it's like, oh gosh, this is really...
So no 100-yard dashes like that in this school?
Yeah, and it's nice that I have phys ed at the very end.
Yeah.
Because when I was in 7th grade, I had it at 7th period, and then I had ELA for the last 2 periods. And, my ELA class was all the way upstairs and all the way at the end of the hallway, and I came out this door.
Right.
So that was the longest commitment, and I was always, and for the most part, I was very close to having the bell, ring. But the nice thing is in high school, you actually have 4 minutes to get to your classes as opposed to 2.
Right.
So it's easier to get to my class in the amount of time.
Good. That's good. So let's take another break, and we'll come back, and we're going to talk about some concerns and issues moving forward.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. We are talking back to school, a little off-the-cuff discussion here, and a little catch-up of the last 2 weeks. We're going to talk about some of the concerns and issues we have moving forward. And probably the biggest one that I think I have, and one that I was hoping that you'd kind of give me the 411 on, the information on. Do you feel safe with the precautions at school now for COVID? That's one that we had talked about that you're going to kind of have to assess. And what's your initial assessment?
Well, the good thing is they make sure that everyone's wearing their masks properly, which is nice. You're only ever allowed to take your mask off if you're actively eating, actively playing an instrument, or actively in gym.
Okay. That's something.
Yeah, we're having assigned seating so that everyone knows that they're in the same seat, and for COVID precautions, so that everyone just stays in the same seat every day.
What about overcrowding? How's the crowding in there? Are you bumping into people in class? Are you spread out in class? Are you tight in the hallways? How's the overall crowding in there?
In the hallways, it's a bit tight, but in the classroom, it's not really as tight. And the classrooms are spaced out.
Okay, what about, you said you had an assembly already. How was the assembly?
Kinda crammed, not gonna lie. We were crammed into one area in the auditorium, the center, and all the seats were filled.
And how did that make you feel? Did you have a sense of anxiety from that?
Kind of, because I knew this really wasn't COVID approved. I don't know why they didn't space us out all that much.
Did you say anything to anybody?
I wasn't able to. I just I said it out loud, but I don't really think anyone heard me because everyone else was talking.
So, all right, this is something I definitely wanted to talk about. I don't want you to be put in a situation where you feel unsafe at school. So if you're in a situation like that and they're asking you to sit or stand or do something and you don't feel safe, then you need to tell a teacher or you need to tell a staff member or something like that how you feel. I don't want you to be shy about it because I'll guarantee you that there's probably a lot of other kids that feel the same way and they're afraid to say anything. And if you speak up and set the example and let them know that what they're doing is making the kids feel unsafe, you can set the right example from day one right there. You're not going to get in trouble for it. Trust me, if they even try to get you in trouble for that, they're going to get a lot more than a nasty letter from me. All right, I will back you up 110% on that. You need to feel safe. You know what is safe. You're well aware of what the CDC guidelines are. You don't know how many of those kids have been vaccinated. Just because you're wearing a mask doesn't mean you're safe being shoulder to shoulder with people. Mm-hmm. So I don't want you to feel any hesitation whatsoever of going up saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I don't feel comfortable in this situation. I am too close to other people during a pandemic. Can I space out? Can I move someplace else? Can I sit someplace a little bit further away? Can I sit someplace safer? I don't feel safe. And make sure you say those exact words, I don't feel safe. Because if they don't do anything at that point, then they're legally liable. So you need to let them know you feel that your safety is threatened by what they're trying to do. Okay? Mm-hmm. So don't ever hesitate to do that. Okay. And then we'll see how they react to that. And if they react properly, kudos to them. If they don't, I have an overwhelming sense of pity for them if they don't. Because I will rain fire down on them if they don't. Because you and every other one of those children need to be safe. Mm-hmm. We've already gotten notifications from the school system about COVID infections. And if they're doing stuff like that and they're acting stupid like that, then they need to be called on the carpet and they need to make sure that they're keeping these kids safe. Because I will not send you to school if they are refusing to keep you safe. All right?
Yeah.
Neither mommy or I, we will both back you up on that 110%. So make sure you speak up. You set that example. And you let them deal with it at that point in time. And I'll guarantee you there will be other kids, tons of other kids are going to feel the same way, and they're going to be glad that you have got the courage to do that. All right, so let's just keep that in mind in the back of our mind. Besides that, do they have cleaning supplies available? Do they have barriers up? Talk to me about some of the protocols that they have.
They do have cleaning supplies that you can use, but they don't have any barriers up.
Okay. So are you cleaning?
Yeah.
Okay. What about hand sanitizing?
They do have hand sanitizer, but I did bring my own, so I kind of used that.
Good girl. How are the bathrooms? Are the bathrooms being cleaned?
I don't know. I haven't really gone in the bathroom.
What about water fountains? Are they open in use?
I believe so.
But you're not using them, right?
No.
Okay. Do you have a water bottle that you can fill up and keep with you?
Yeah, I could.
Okay.
I do.
That's the best thing to do then.
Yeah,
Count on yourself.
And the nice thing is they do allow water bottles, which is nice. I've seen other kids have water bottles. So.
Right. Well, because I know they were giving them out at the orientation as the prize.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's okay. Is there anything else that's happening that makes you feel unsafe or that you're questioning from a COVID protocol standpoint?
That would probably be the buses home.
Okay.
It's extremely crowded in there to the point where the 3-seaters actually have to fit 3 people, and the 2-seaters actually have to fit 2 people. And like Mommy said, with little kids you can kind of fit 3 people in there, but with high schoolers you really can't.
Right.
And the good thing was me and Kenny are able to just sit in the 3-seater and not really have to have 3 people, which is nice because we kind of space ourselves from each other. So at least I feel safe from that. But like, there are a lot of people on that bus, and it's extremely crammed.
So are there hand sanitizers or wipes or anything on the bus?
I can't tell.
You can't tell. Okay. Are they ventilating the bus? Are there windows down? How is the bus ventilation?
I think you can put the windows down. I'm not entirely sure. I've never really paid too much attention to it.
Okay. All right. These are things that Mommy and I are going to have to address. We'll certainly make our concerns known. Any other COVID-related concerns?
I think that's mostly it.
Okay. So how about the schedule? How are you holding up? Are you tired? You have enough energy? Are you getting enough sleep? What's going on with your sleep patterns?
I've started getting used to it at this point. It's not insanely bad. I've been getting good sleep. And I've been having enough energy during the day, so I think so far with my sleep schedule, it's been all right.
So how about even the nights that you've got band practice? How is that on you?
I definitely think that's going to be a bit of a challenge to work through, because when I came home on Wednesday, I wasn't really feeling all that well.
Right.
So that might be something we have to look for.
Okay. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see what we can do to adjust that. Was it just that you were tired and exhausted? Was it heat? Did you not get enough to drink, you think?
I felt like I had a decent amount to drink. It wasn't too hot out. I might not have had enough energy at the time, and I guess just the fact that we had to pretty much do the same stuff over and over again kind of got tiring to the point where I kind of just didn't really have the energy. I started completely losing it faster.
Right. More mental exhaustion that led to physical exhaustion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the repetitives. I could see that. All right. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that. How about your classes? Do you like your teachers?
Mostly.
Mostly. That's a vote of confidence.
The only one I'm not really all that fond of right now is...
Don't mention too much in here, because you never know who watches the podcast or listens to the podcast.
True. There is one teacher I'm not necessarily fond of. They take their job a bit too seriously, I think.
Okay.
To the point where they have our first assignment on Friday, where none of my other teachers really have that right now.
Okay.
And, it was an easy assignment. It's just... Do you really have to be that hard on us this early?
Maybe they're just trying to set that pace up for you that they're going to drive you. And there's nothing wrong with being challenged. If they do it with unrealistic expectations, then we have a problem. But I don't think it's unrealistic to expect kids to turn in an assignment after the first week of school. It kind of gives the teacher, kind of lets the teacher set the bar too as to what to expect from these kids. All right. So not too bad there. What about the curriculum? Have you run into anything with the curriculum yet that's concerning to you?
I just know I'm going to be expecting a lot of work, and with marching band that might be difficult. I guess I'll just, have to deal with it.
Yeah, well, in marching band's not all year. So, if you can look at it this way, if you can deal with the workload while you're in marching band for the first couple of months, then you'll be able to breeze through it the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So this is going to be probably the most difficult part of the year for you. So we got to keep an eye on it and make sure that you're okay and you're staying up on everything. Mm-hmm. It's a test, and we'll see how you pass the test.
Okay.
Chromebooks. So you guys are switching to Chromebooks this year. No textbooks? Some textbooks?
Well, they still have the textbooks in case you need them, but they're not giving them out.
So you literally just go from class to class with a Chromebook and a notebook or two?
Yeah, and some stuff for binders and stuff.
How are you adjusting to that?
It's nice not having to carry around giant books all day.
Right.
Still kind of have a heavy bag, but it's not as heavy as it would have been if I did have those, 5-pound books.
Okay. Are you comfortable using the Chromebooks?
I feel so. It's definitely not my actual laptop, which I'm actually using at home, because you don't want to have this connect to the internet, my Chromebook connect to the internet here.
Well, we can get you connected here if you have stuff on there you need to work with, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
We'll get you connected. No issues technology-wise, though, using it? You're comfortable with it? The interface is okay?
Yeah, it's fine. It just feels like a smaller screen than you'd kind of expect, because, with my engineering and CAD classes, we actually have legitimate computers.
Right.
With a much larger screen, that while the keyboard's kind of clunky, it's actually a lot easier to see. With the Chromebook, it's kind of small.
Okay. Well, and we might be able to work around that here if we have to. I can't do much for you in class, but
it's all right.
We might be able to work around with it here for homework and stuff like that.
Yeah, but overall, using it at school, I feel, is fine.
Yeah, well, that's good. I didn't think it would be too big of a leap since you were kind of homeschooling on a computer the last year and a half anyway. So using a Chromebook's a bit of a learning curve because of the operating system, but good. I'm glad it wasn't a big concern. What other concerns or issues do you have that we haven't talked about? Any personality conflicts you've had? No bullying at this point, I assume?
No bullying has been happening. I've never really interacted all that much with some of the people, so...
How about marching band? Do you have a lot of marching band kids in your classes?
Not some, but not a lot.
Okay. Are there any other concerns about school that you have at this point in time? Doesn't sound like there's anything pressing.
Yeah, which is kind of surprising. I'm still kind of waiting to see how things go.
Well, it's very early. I think my main purpose of the podcast today was kind of just feel things out and get your initial impressions and address any concerns that you might have. We'll certainly check in. We don't have to do it as a podcast, but we'll check in throughout the year as we move on, and as problems creep up, we'll figure them out and we'll deal with them. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. There isn't anything that we can't address and take care of. We take care of it all. So that's all I had. I just threw together some quick notes and some questions that I had. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll get your closing thoughts on how the start of school is.
Alrighty.
Or anything else you want to talk about. It's your show. You can talk about whatever you want. We'll be right back. Go with your closing remarks.
Alright, so I know this podcast really doesn't have all that much of a message to it. It was kind of just a, hey, let's check in and see how the last 2 weeks have been. But yeah, I've started school, and I'm probably gonna have to deal with a lot of stuff that hopefully we can try relating to everyone at home. I at least hope that this was at least somewhat helpful, if not at least you enjoyed watching. I at least hope this was an okay podcast after not being here for a week.
Okay. I would say that was sage words, but really that was just you summing things up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids out there that might be watching the podcast have gone through similar things as you. Start of school is always kind of a nervous time, a heightened emotion time, lots of new things, especially going into high school for the first time. This will be the first and only time you ever have to do this.
Yeah.
High school's all downhill from here. That's the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
So that was all we had. Before we do go, I would invite our audience to subscribe to the podcast once again. You can get audio versions of this podcast. listed as Insights into Teens. Video versions are listed as Insights into Things. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and anywhere you can get a podcast. I would also invite you to reach out, give us your feedback, give us your show suggestions. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're on Twitter at Insights Into Things. You can find high-res versions of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you get a free monthly Twitch Prime subscription. We'd appreciate it if you subscribe to our show at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can also find audio versions of this podcast on the web at podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast and Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings, or links to all those bios of all of our hosts and much more on our website at insightsintothings.com. And you.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
That's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 124, Teens and Entitlement. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my grateful and cheerful co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie? You can be honest. It's okay. That's what this show's for.
Not so well.
Not so well, huh? Anything we want to address here or no?
Probably just burnt out from band and school and stuff. It's
tough first full week at school.
Yeah, we might talk about it later on the podcast, maybe next week, not sure.
Sounds like we got a good podcast coming up then.
Really?
But this week we are talking about entitlement. This was one that you had done the research for. We'll talk about what the mentality of entitlement and its clinical definition are. We'll explore how entitlement mentality affects relationships, and then we'll take a look at signs of an entitled teenager and methods to fix entitled behavior before we wrap up with 3 tools for battling entitlement. But before we do that, though, I do want to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. We did resolve the issues we had with our video hosting, so all of our video podcasts are now up and running on Podbean. Big thanks to them for that. They made it very easy to migrate over. So if you do want video versions of our podcast, you can find us listed as Insights into Things. Audio versions of this podcast can be listed and found as Insights into Teens, and they are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and pretty much any place you can get a podcast these days. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. We're always looking for show suggestions. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things, or on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast, or on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings, or links to all those on our website at insightsintothings.com. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So what is the mentality of entitlement? So the research for this comes from WebMD.com, and it was conducted by you, Madison. They say that entitlement mentality is defined as a sense of deservingness or being owed a favor when little or nothing has been done to deserve special treatment. It can be known as the, quote, "you owe me" attitude. Clinically speaking, entitlement is a narcissistic personality trait. People with narcissistic personality disorder have an inflated idea of themselves and a need for lots of attention from other people. It's not known exactly how this mentality develops, but a sense of entitlement may be due to social factors including the environment you grew up in, the way your parents treated you, whether adults solved your problems for you or not, or how you're treated by authority figures.
So, now I want to kind of mention how entitlement mentality can affect your relationships. People with an entitlement mentality often see themselves as superior to others. As a result, this way of thinking affects interpersonal relationships. There can be long-term relationship damage as a result of entitlement mentality. When you believe you're entitled to better treatment than others, or that the rules don't apply to you, you're more likely to suffer in the long term. Given that you simply believe you aren't getting what you're owed, an entitlement mentality can result in conflict in relationships, unhappiness, disappointment, and depression. Your career may suffer too. Entitled people often interview well and can land leadership roles because of their confidence. However, they often lack team spirit and avoid problem-solving in the workplace. Most of the decisions an entitled person makes are self-serving. This can quickly become apparent to their coworkers.
There's also the cycle of entitlement that we should talk about. So feeling entitled to something and the disappointment that follows when you don't get what you want can reinforce entitled behavior. This typically follows a vicious 3-step cycle. When you're entitled, you're always vulnerable to the threat of unmet expectations. When your expectations are unmet, it can lead to dissatisfaction and other emotions like anger and a sense of being cheated. When you're distressed, you try to fix the situation and console yourself. This results in self-assurance that you deserve everything you've ever wanted, which reinforces the same entitled behavior. So it's kind of a cycle that feeds itself when you get into that rut there.
Yep.
So let me start off by asking, do you think you suffer from an entitlement mentality?
I mean, I don't really think I do. I never really feel like I'm ever always owed something. I know that, like, for the most part, I never feel like I'm owed anything, even if I do something for someone else. I guess only if the expectation I have of that person is to is to have them kind of owe me in a way, then that's really the only time I think of that. But most of the time, I feel like I mostly owe people for the most part. Like,
Right.
even if it's really not that big of a deal.
And I would tend to agree for the most part. And not to pat myself and mommy on the back, but I think a lot of that comes with the fact that even though I don't want you to want for anything, what mommy and I have done was we've tried, since the time that you were a baby, we've tried to teach you that in order to get the things that you want, they have to be earned. Either they're earned by good behavior, they're earned by obeying the rules, they're earned by doing your chores, whatever it is. And through the years, you've willingly accepted that. And when things are given to you, you're very appreciative because you yourself have had the opportunity to work and earn money, and you understand what the value of that effort actually is. Do you think that has helped you to not have an entitlement attitude?
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of people who are entitled don't understand the value of hard work. When you think about kids who constantly want everything and their parents just willingly go along with it, they don't know they don't really take value in how they would get what they wanted. It's just that they got it, and that's all they really care about. They don't care, like, how much money their parents spent, how much time it took them to get this, like, how much effort that went into giving them this, something that they demanded, and all they care about is that they got it, and sometimes they just completely throw it away, or just completely trash their parents because it was like a different model or something.
Right. And it's funny, and in my experience, I find that the people that tend to be those who are the most entitled are the ones that haven't had to work to get to where they are. A couple of people that I've worked for in the past come to mind where their parents were very industrious. They were the ones that started out with nothing, worked their way to the top, became very successful at what they did, and then their children benefited from that, but there was never a need for their children to actually, excuse me, there was never a need for the children to actually put that effort in themselves. They've always been entitled in my experience. Do you know anybody? Have you experienced anyone who's entitled that you're aware of?
I can't say that any specific person comes to mind. I've tried to probably avoid those kinds of people, especially because you never really want to be around someone who's completely entitled and only thinks of themselves and no one else.
Right.
The only example I can really think of might be controversial in a way.
Okay.
And that's people who really don't wear masks.
That's a fair point.
Some of those people might be considered to be entitled in a way.
I could certainly see where you're going with that, and that kind of makes sense. A lot of times entitlement can also be about largely not appreciating what you have. Like those people, let's talk about the mask wearers. The mask wearers are people who understand that there are sacrifices that you have to make for the greater good. When I wear a mask, I don't wear a mask just to protect myself. I wear a mask to protect all those around me too. To protect my family, to protect my coworkers. And those who don't wear a mask, most of the ones, at least that I've encountered, tend to look at it as, well, I don't need to wear a mask. I'm going to get it no matter what, and I'll just have a natural immunity. And I think that's kind of an entitled opinion because, you may be young, you may be healthy, you may be in good shape and not have any underlying conditions, but you're not the only one at risk. You could very well get it, get a mild case of it, but become a carrier and then spread that to others.
Mm-hmm.
And this entitlement mentality is all about me. What can I do for me? What's important to me? What's valuable to me? And people that are the anti-maskers are all about themselves. They'll throw out different, freedoms and stuff like that, but really it's about them. And wearing a mask is really about protecting others. And so I agree with you. I think you're probably on par with that. So you've never had a situation where you've had to deal with an entitled mentality or anything like that?
No, thank goodness.
Well, I had this one boss a few years back, and we used to have a saying, and we said, his father put him on third, as a baseball reference. His father put him on third, and he convinced himself that he hit a triple. And he just assumed that because he rode his father's coattails to financial success, that he himself was financially successful and competent and intelligent. And when his father kind of got done dealing with all that nonsense and let him go run off on his own and run his own company, he ran it into the ground and proved that he couldn't manage his way out of a wet paper bag. And he still thought that he was entitled. Even after all that, and once his father cut him off, he kind of had to fend for himself, and I think he started to get an appreciation at that point in time for how tough business was and how tough it was to make it on your own. So even people that are uber entitled, and we're talking somebody who, was millions of dollars, in his bank account in one instance, owned a company, owned a multi-million-dollar home, owned a yacht, owned all this different stuff, went from that to basically nothing. And he's, owing money to the IRS and stuff like that. Even people that are that entitled can come around and start to get an appreciation and work through that entitlement. So let's take a little break, and we're going to come back and look at what some of the signs are in teenagers that are entitled. And we'll start looking at how we can deal with this entitlement mentality. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about teens and entitlement. And now we're going to be talking about what are the signs of an entitled teenager. And this research comes from finallyfamilyhomes.org. And it says an entitled teenager is confused about what's deserved, what's earned, and what's a gift. They're unwilling to help others or accept personal responsibility for themselves. Entitled teens have high demands for everyone but themselves. Entitlement is a feeling your child may have, but it's very unlikely for them to express it directly. Therefore, it's up to you to determine if your teen has a sense of entitlement. Here are 5 signs that may indicate you have an entitled child. So the first sign we have is they can't handle being told no. They melt down, pout, or put up a battle every time you turn down a request. An immediate yes is the only way to avoid a battle.
They also show no signs of sincere gratitude. Again, something that we don't have with you, fortunately. Why should they be grateful for what they believe they're owed? You're lucky to usually hear a forced thanks from them when you give them something. An ungrateful teen is a sign of an entitled teen.
They may also have a long list of never-ending demands. If you don't expect to walk through a store without being barraged with demands for nearly everything you walk by, you probably have an entitled teenager.
They also have a no-can-do attitude. Make their own sandwich or lunch for themselves, pick up their laundry or trash on their floor. That's too much to ask for them.
Another behavior can be that they're constantly comparing. It always seems to be not fair for them. They're not afraid to ask for the best and the first.
If 3 or more of these sound like your child, you're probably dealing with an entitled teenager. Being entitled will not serve them or you well, so it's important to help your child grow out of this attitude.
So now we can look at how to fix entitled behavior. The first step towards successfully fighting entitlement is looking into what may be driving the behavior. Usually there is some misinformation or false beliefs driving their feelings that are feeding the entitled attitudes and behaviors. In addition, the teenagers are developmentally inclined to be more wrapped up in themselves.
As far as false beliefs go, it could be that they have bought into the message that their value is based on what they own or how they look. If your sense of personal wealth or your personal worth is on the line, non-essentials can start to look very essential. Those $100 jeans aren't just expensive. Getting them becomes tied to how loved and lovable you believe you are.
Feeling equipped or unable to get what you want or need can drive entitled behavior. If you think that the only way you can get those jeans is to demand them, that's what you're going to do.
Developmentally, the science shows that teenage brains begin to revolve more intensely around self as they begin preparing for independence. Consequently, teens need extra help during this time to think about others and to empathize. Chances are that they're not thinking about how much work or money someone else spent to give them something, which is something that we had already kind of addressed in the previous segment there. So let me ask you, do you tie your self-worth to any kind of personal or materialistic possessions?
Not really. I normally try tying my self-worth more or less to my good-hearted nature or my intelligence or some of my hobbies and stuff like that. More or less the things I feel that actually make up who I am rather than material possessions.
And I think you're absolutely right. You do. You make it more about who you are and what you can offer to other people than about what you have and what people can offer to you. So let's go down the 5 signs real quick and just see if you exhibit any of these just as a interesting mental exercise. So the being told no, they can't handle being told no. Is that something that bothers you? Is that something that you have difficulty accepting?
Not really, for the most part. Yeah, I can kind of feel a bit upset if, I'm being told no, but it's not like I'll, break out screaming at you guys. I'll be like, oh, alright, and then I'll kind of just walk away from it.
Right. How about sincere gratitude? Are you actually grateful when people do something for you or give you something like for instance, G-Ma is a great example of this. G-Ma made the big blanket for you, and she spent hours and hours putting this thing together and doing the pattern and all that stuff. How did that make you feel?
Honestly, I loved it. I love the fact that she put so much time into it, and honestly, it makes it so much better when I sleep with it because I know that it was made with care, and honestly, I really love the design of it as well.
Yeah, it's almost like when you sleep with it that, G-Ma's giving you a hug every time you curl up with it,
Yeah.
So a long list of never-ending demands. How demanding do you think you are?
Not really.
You're not at all.
Yeah, like the few times I actually like would want something, it takes me a while to like come up, and like I'm normally like very quiet about it, like, "Hey, Daddy, so I was thinking about something."
Right. And like when you want to get a new add-on for The Sims, one of your passions, and you're paying for it, which is the ultimate irony here. You're paying for it yourself with your own money that you earn. I just have to buy it for you because you don't have purchase rights on your account. You come to me and you're all shy. And my response is, what's the ask? What do you want? Just tell me what you want. And you're like, oh, well, I want to buy this. All right, here, it's done. Have fun. So no, you're not demanding at all.
Yeah.
You don't demand, to go shopping. You don't demand clothes. You don't demand any of the things that, when you were born and I knew I was having a daughter, I was terrified because I didn't know if I'd be able to relate to a daughter. And I heard all horror stories from my friends who had girls about, when they get to this age, they're going to always want to go shopping. They're going to want this. They're going to want that. And I got none of that from you. And it was almost like, were they just trying to scare me, or are you just that different? And it's like, yeah, she's pretty easy to get along with at this point, So you've never had that problem. How about a no can do attitude? If we ask you to do something, do you resist that? Do you say, no, not my job, don't bother me, anything like that?
Not really. Unless, I'm in a bad mood, which never normally am unless, it's an actual physical thing or something happened. So I normally always do what you guys ask me, unless I forget.
Yes, and given the fact that you're my daughter and I ask you to do something and you don't do it, I totally understand why you don't do it, because you are my daughter.
Because I forget. What
about comparing? Do you compare a lot?
I normally like to try not to. I've never really been all that much into social media and stuff, and I never compare these kids get this and I have to have this. The only time I've ever done that is with school lunch, but am I really going to complain about something that petty?
That's a very good point. And no, I think for the most part, both Bobby and I would agree that you really are not the type of person to compare yourself to someone else. Growing up, I had a friend that was like that. And I've said many times on this podcast that growing up, my parents did not have a lot of money. We struggled to put food on the table and a roof over our head. So I never really got toys. I never got gifts that were not associated with a birthday party, my birthday or Christmas. So it was kind of a very bare bones type of thing. But it's funny because when I would get something for my birthday, it was huge to me. I was incredibly grateful for it because I knew how difficult it was for my parents to provide. And I had this one friend of mine that every time I would get something decent that he liked for my birthday, he'd be this entitled kid. He'd go out, he'd bug his parents and make his parents go out and buy it for him. And he would either get the same thing or he would get one better than me just so that he had something better. And I never really understood what that drive was. And I think it was because coming from the position that I was in, it was never an option for me. The fact that I got what I got in the first place was a huge thing for me. The fact that I want something better than somebody else just never really, it never computed with me. I never really understood it. And I still don't, even after doing this research. But I've run into that type of thing in the past where he would compare himself to me, which I thought was hilarious because we were paupers compared to him and his parents. And I'm like, why would you compare yourself to me? I don't, the funny thing was with the exception of my dad, the relationship that I had with my mom was fantastic. And his parents almost bought him stuff so they didn't have to deal with him. And I think he was almost jealous of how close I was to my mom because he'd never had that with either of his parents. I don't know. It's speculation, 30, 40 years ago speculation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what we have for our suggestions on how to fix it. But we're going to give you 3 tools. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to give you 3 tools to help battle entitlement. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking teens and entitlement. And now we're going to be talking about 3 tools for battling entitlement. It seems like entitlement is all around us, especially among teenagers. You can't be complacent if you want your teen to break free from entitlement. It requires effort and intention. So the first tip we have here is teach your teen gratitude. The number one enemy of entitlement is gratitude. Gratitude isn't just being thankful or appreciative, but also recognizing the effort of the giver. Explicitly teaching your self-focused teen how to be grateful will help them develop gratitude more quickly and fully. Identify a gift when it comes. This means being able to tell the difference between what's owed, what's earned, and what's given as an act of kindness. If you didn't earn it and no one owes you, it's a gift. Appreciate what you have. This means considering the worth and value of what is given. Recognize the kindness of the giver. Someone had to work and pay and be thoughtful of the recipient when given the gift.
See, the other interesting thing about teaching your teen gratitude is that not only does it help them to get out of this entitlement attitude, but it also makes the things that they get worth more to them. Like if you didn't have gratitude for the gifts that you got, the blanket that G-Mom made for you would just be another article of linen that was in the house. It would have no intrinsic meaning to you. It wouldn't have any sentimental value to you. It would just be a blanket like any other blanket. But because of the gratitude that you have and the appreciation that you have, it makes that item all the more valuable to you. So the individual who has gratitude for what they receive increases the benefit of the things that they receive as well, which is another interesting take on it. The next thing that we have, and we've already kind of touched on it, and that is to fight comparison. They say they talk specifically about social media. So they say set time limits and ditch social media altogether. Help your teens interpret what they're seeing in the media and online. Remind them that all things are meant to sell. Even their friend on social media is selling something, such as, I've got it all together, or you should admire me. These are all half stories at best, but most are outright lies. Never compare your teen to others yourself. Conversely, do remind your teen that their value is in who they are and not in what they have or how they compare to someone else. And again, this is another one that has multiple benefits to it. If your as valuable as you feel yourself, then it doesn't matter what personal possessions you have.
Yeah.
And personal possessions come and go. You know, if this week you're valuable because you have the expensive designer jeans, well, what happens next year when those jeans are out of style and they're sitting in a drawer somewhere? Do you not feel worthy anymore because you're not wearing those jeans? Like that, tying your self-worth to that type of thing is kind of silly.
Yeah, and it's pretty much a downward spiral from there.
Right, and it becomes almost impossible to feed that appetite for belonging and self-worth when you're attaching it to a materialistic type of thing. Mm-hmm. If you make yourself a better person, if you're compassionate, if you're empathetic, if you help people, like that's one of the reasons why I enjoy the kind of work that I do. You know, I work in IT. My job is to help other people. It's to solve problems, whether it's a problem somebody's having with their computer or whether it's a problem that the company's having that needs to be solved. The ability to solve problems for other people is self-fulfilling for me. And it allows me to do that outside of work. Yeah. You know, I tell a lot of people, I'm very fortunate that my profession happens to also be my hobby. But anybody, you know, first responders, doctors, nurses, police officers, people that are out there protecting people and saving lives, there's no item that you could have in the world that would make you feel more valuable than to do something like that, you know? Mm-hmm. So when somebody commits themselves to being a better person and making the world a better place, even in a little bit, you know, like, no, I'm not going to go out there and solve world hunger or create world peace or anything like that. Yeah, you know, I got some perspective on life. I'm not expecting to save the world. But if I make a person smile today because I crack a joke that makes them laugh, you know, or I see a coworker happens to be troubled or down, and I just give them a shoulder to lean on or an ear to listen to what their issues are, and I make them feel better, then I made my little part of the world a little bit better today. Mm-hmm. And I think that means more in the grand scheme of things than having that designer shoe or that new handbag or whatever it is that people tend to attach value to. Making people feel better, making the world better, makes you more valuable to the world. Mm-hmm. And when you feel more valuable to the world, you feel more valuable to yourself. What's something that you do that makes you feel better about yourself and makes you feel more valuable?
Let's see. I guess the thing that I'd probably say that I feel makes me valuable is kind of this podcast. I'm a real teen experiencing real issues that teens face, and talking about it on the podcast, I know has been helping people. People have really looked at this podcast and have really benefited from it. And not only was it to help me get through my own issues and talk it out with you, but it was also in order to help others. And so far, I think that's probably one of my most valuable attributes.
And I think I would agree. I think we've gotten feedback already. I've chatted with people on some of our rebroadcast feeds, and they told me how valuable this podcast has been to them. But I'm going to give you another example that's immediate in my mind, and that was yesterday. So yesterday I came home from work, and I was agitated, and I was kind of angry and worked up, and I was recounting what happened at work yesterday. And you saw how upset I was. And what did you do? Do you know what you did?
Patted you on the shoulder.
Yeah, you just came over, and just that simple gesture of, Dad, it's okay. You're home now. It's okay. Immediately had a calming effect. And that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot that you cared how I felt. And it meant a lot that you wanted to ease that burden. And you didn't have a good day at school. You kind of were dealing with your own problems. And it was one of those, you know what, I can help here. I can do something. I can relieve that burden. And it did. And when you can have that effect on other people with a simple gesture of just coming over and patting somebody on the shoulder and letting them know it's okay. You're home now. Everything's all right. Don't worry about it. Doing that makes you a better person. You made your corner of the world a little bit better yesterday by doing that. And that means a lot. What else did we have?
The last tip we have is empower them to get things for themselves. Does your teen struggle with understanding that getting things requires effort? Let them work for it and find out for themselves. Entitlement can be a tough attitude to turn around. Until their brains develop more fully, expect to continue to battle entitlement. Nevertheless, try to be patient with your teenager.
It's also important that you should be patient with yourself. Entitlement can be hard to stomach in and of itself, and it takes effort to steer that ship in the right direction. You're bound to make mistakes as you navigate how to deal with an entitled teen. If you make mistakes, try fixing them, but keep working on it. It's worth the effort. And I think I can honestly say that Mommy and I kind of have steered the ship pretty well with you. I think we don't have an entitlement issue with you. What's your overall conclusion of your entitlement level, given all we've talked about today?
Honestly, pretty low. I'm very grateful for everything I've been given. I've never felt that I've been entirely owed something, and even when I kind of want to get something, I'm never really demanding of it.
And I think the other important thing to note is we don't give you things. We give you opportunities. And it's up to you to choose whether or not you want to take advantage of those opportunities to obtain the things that you want. So there is no sense of entitlement that we get from you. You can either do your chores or not do your chores. There's no pressure either way. If you do them, there's a benefit. If you don't do them, there's no benefit. And there are weeks, that you've not done them. You didn't feel good. We were too busy. You had too much stuff going on. And it's fine if you don't do them. But you also want to accept the fact that you don't get that benefit when you don't. And because of that, Mommy and Daddy don't have any issue giving you things above and beyond because you do go above and beyond. We don't ask a lot of you, but you give far more than we ask, I think. And because of that, I think you should be rewarded for it. And a lot of times you are. What happened? You were at band practice over the weekend. What did Mommy and Daddy do?
You pretty much redesigned my room.
Yeah, Mommy went in there and she was cleaning it up. She was putting your clothes away. She swept up the floor. And we came up with the idea. We had shelves that we were going to put up for you. All right, let's put the shelves up. Let's redo the room here. Let's move, because you have a whole lot of Lego models that you have. Let's put them up on the shelf. Let's clear some space off here. Let's give her a little nicer working area here so it can be a little nice. It's little things like that. It didn't cost us a dime to do any of that. It wasn't that we spent money on you. It was time, and it was effort, and it was love that we spent on you. And you were incredibly appreciative of it. And that's rewarding to us as well. It wasn't just you got a benefit from them. Mommy and Daddy got the benefit. To see that smile on your face, to see that reaction you had when you walked in your room. That's something that pays off in dividends for us. So not being entitled and trying to be a good person has its own benefits to it. And I think we all experienced that this week. So I think that was all we had. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get your closing thoughts. And we'll finish up the rest of the business of the podcast.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back. Go over your closing remarks.
Alrighty, so if there is anyone out there that has to experience being around an entitled teen or, just entitlement in general, just know that it takes time to get over it. You can at least help your teen in order to help them learn the value of hard work and the value of gratitude. And simply having an unentitled nature and just being extremely grateful for everything has many benefits, and no matter what, it's always worth the effort, no matter how much you have to put in.
Okay, very well said. Sage advice and knowledge as always.
Thank you.
Before I do want to move on, I do want to acknowledge we're broadcasting live for the first time on our new Podbean account, and we do have one listener in the chat room now. I hope you can hear us. I don't know if it actually works. We did get a hello. Thank you for that. I assume that's going to confirm that we are actually being heard out there. This was kind of our first test of this one today. Before we do go, I do want to once again invite our audio and video audience out there to subscribe to the podcast. You can find us listed as Insights into Teens for our audio version or Insights into Things for our video version of the podcast. We're listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, any place you can find a podcast. I would also invite you to give us your feedback. We're always looking for suggestions for show topics. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're also on Twitter at insightsintothings. You can send us actually DMs on Twitter. We do accept them. You can get high-res versions of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can get audio versions of this podcast on the web at podcast.insightsintoteens.com. Video versions you can get now at podcast.insightsintothings, which is, again, another benefit from our hosting on Podbean. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast or on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Let's slow down there. Instagram.com/insightsintothings, or you can find us on the web at insightsintothings.com and you.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
And that's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 125, Teens and Accountability. I am your host, Joseph Whalen, and my responsible and accountable co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
All right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. How was your week this week?
So far, not bad.
So far, it's Thursday. It's got to be fairly decent, right?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, good. No major issues, no major problems, nothing to talk about.
I mean, there have been stuff, but not extremely bad stuff.
Enough to make a podcast? Maybe a later date. We'll just pile all this stuff together and then we'll make a podcast out of it.
Sure.
Okay. That's not what we're talking about today, though.
Nope.
Today we are talking about teens and accountability. This week we'll be talking about what accountability is and how to hold teens accountable. Then we'll talk about setting goals and how to help our teens realize those goals. And finally, we'll talk about ways to help instill accountability in teens and help them make themselves successful. But before we do that, I would invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can get audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can get video versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Things. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Podbean now, as well as Buzzsprout. Any place you can get a podcast, you can get us. I would also invite you to reach out, contact us, give us your suggestions for shows, give us your feedback on how we're doing. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/insights_things. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast, or on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. We can get links to all that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. Shall we get into it?
Yes, we shall.
All right. So what is accountability? So our definition for accountability comes from a site we've used before called MiddleEarthNJ.org. And they say the definition of accountability is taking responsibility for one's actions, and it is something every parent hopes their teen will do. That's kind of a subjective statement. I'm assuming every parent does, but I'm sure there's a few out there who could care less. When parents teach their kids to take responsibility for their decisions and actions, they help them develop into conscientious human beings and responsible citizens of the community. Without accountability, teenagers blame others and refuse to follow rules they find unfair and find ways to justify their behavior regardless of the impact on others.
So, if we all want accountable teenagers, why are there so many teens and young adults who seem to lack this valuable attribute? Instilling accountability is simply not an easy task. It is a long process that requires patience and diplomacy. Many times, it will appear that our hard work is not achieving any results, which can make some parents give up. But take heart. It is possible to raise accountable teenagers in our modern society, and if you don't give up, you will eventually see your teen develop into a responsible adult. The first step is holding your teen accountable. So how do you do that?
So before we get into how to hold teens accountable, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how accountable do you think you are for your actions and the things you're responsible for?
I'd say for the most part I'm pretty close to 10.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Let's see. I know I'm accountable for my schoolwork.
Right. And how reliable are you at doing your homework, for instance?
Pretty reliable. Unless I, for some reason, forget it, I'm more than likely able to complete my homework unless I have a problem with it, or like I said, I forget it.
So unless you're unreliable, then you're pretty reliable. That's pretty much what you're saying.
Like, mainly if I have problems with it, I'll at least try to, like, talk to the teachers, see if I can work something out. Otherwise, for the most part, I'm able to get most of my homework done for the most part.
Now, are there any areas that you think you could improve your accountability? And I ask not having any particular ones in mind either, so. Which means the valid answer could be no.
Nothing specific comes to mind right now.
Okay, well, maybe as we go through the show here, you might come up with a few things, and we might be able to help you out with some things, or because clearly if you're a 10 out of 10 on accountability, you're probably not going to benefit too much from what we have to cover in this podcast, but
yeah,
maybe by the end of the show we'll find something, or maybe this will just be for the enjoyment, entertainment, and education for those listening and watching.
Sure.
So how do you hold teens accountable? Tell us about that.
So here are some ways to hold our teens accountable. So older teens do much of their schoolwork, chores, and other various tasks without much intervention on the parents' part. Because of this, it can be easy to get lax and to think that they are completing more than they actually are. We all benefit from having accountability in our lives, no matter what our age. Our teens will definitely achieve more when they know what they are answerable to someone than if they are left completely to their own devices.
And I agree with that. I think it's important to have somebody, even with me at work. It's important for me to have someone that I can report to kind of keep me in line and have sanity checks and make sure I'm doing what's right and getting feedback, positive or negative. So having that there is important. But we do have a few tips for holding our older kids accountable. So the first one we talk about is to do some things together. Just because our teenagers are capable of working independently doesn't mean they should do all their work without any input from us. Even though our roles are often more of a mentor than a teacher, our kids still appreciate some togetherness time from time to time. Believe it or not, reading books aloud to our teens is extremely beneficial for them, and it's a great way to make some fun family memories. If your teen is a